Chapter 401. The afternoon sun bathed the Quidditch field in a warmth that was absent in the morning. Little wizards gathered one after another, their excitement palpable. The seats in the Quidditch stadium had been more than doubled to accommodate the influx of spectators. The Tri-Wizard tournament, already popular throughout Europe, had drawn a large number of tourists from all corners of the continent, eager to witness the wizard duels, a beloved traditional activity among wizards. The merchants in Gemode were reaping unprecedented profits. Ethan's upgraded illusion-generating device was already in operation, despite the competition not having started yet. Initially, the device was meant to broadcast the event live, but now it showcased an advertisement. It depicted a wizard on a broomstick, navigating through a forest and overcoming various obstacles to reach his home, where his wife awaited. Impressively, a full glass of butterbeer placed on the broom handle remained undisturbed throughout the flight. The advertisement concluded with the wizard picking up the glass without spilling a drop and highlighted the stability and safety of the cornflower broomstick, which also featured a built-in anti-theft buzzer. The scene ended with the man enjoying the butterbeer and his wife joining him on the broomstick, both disappearing into the distance. This innovative device could now receive and display advertisements, transforming the field into a vibrant display of colors and enticing prints, much like a cascading waterfall. The Quidditch field, numbered 787, had been completely transformed. Its original appearance was unrecognizable. At the center of the arena, a long dual platform was surrounded by soft cushions to prevent injuries from falls. To introduce as many variables as possible into the duel, desks, chairs, and other pieces of furniture were scattered on the mats around the platform, allowing the duelist to employ spells like the Flying Curse, Levitating Spell, and Transformation for tactical advantages. Surrounding this setup, 4 majestic metal pillars, each 4 or 5 meters high, formed a perfect rectangle. These pillars, inlaid with shining magic gems and engraved with dense magic patterns, radiated powerful magical energy. "Ah, Miss Gianna, nice to meet you," Sirius greeted warmly as he approached Gianna in the stands, offering a handshake and a friendly pat on the shoulder. Compared to his previously thin and haggard appearance, Sirius now looked handsome and much healthier, a change for which he expressed his gratitude to Gianna and Mr. Green. After exchanging pleasantries, they noted Sirius's presence in the most luxurious top-level box, a sign he was working to restore the Black family's influence. Gianna acknowledged this silently, recognizing Sirius as an ally beneficial to the Genius Club. At that moment, several Aura Guards in new uniforms made their way through the crowd, creating a path for Gianna, Cirilla, Penelo, and Onyxia, escorting them to their exclusive box. Today's game had special arrangements, omitting the referee scoring session, and thus there was no referee's bench set up. Ethan, meanwhile, was seated among the audience, sharing the moment with Zhang. Ethan, as the organizer and referee, had arranged a special privilege for himself by securing a seat in the first row of the coaching bench. Despite the magic live broadcast system enabling every spectator to watch the game's details clearly, the coaching bench held a unique significance. Positioned in the first row, it allowed for close interaction with the Warriors. Moreover, before the game commenced, those seated on the coaching bench had the opportunity to step onto the court and offer guidance to the players. "Sister and Sister Hermione, where are they?" Gabriel scanned the area, her curiosity piqued by the absence of Hermione and Fleur. "They underwent a wand inspection in the lounge to prevent any form of cheating," Ethan explained with a smile. After the inspection, they took their places on the benches along the sides of the field, waiting for the game to start. As the clock struck 9:20 in the morning, signaling 10 minutes before the game's official start, several Warriors emerged from the lounge. They took their seats on either side of the court, visibly nervous. This was their first time performing in front of such a large audience. Unlike the previous games, which were broadcast live but held in a more enclosed and larger playing field, today's game was different. Playing in front of thousands of wizards created a distinctly more intense atmosphere. Ethan caught Hermione's eye, offering her an encouraging gesture. She responded with a bright, heartwarming smile. Fleur, standing next to Hermione, observed their exchange and couldn't hide her annoyance, her lips pursing in displeasure. Noticing Fleur's mood, Ethan quickly gestured to her, mouthing the words, "Come on." Fleur's expression softened, and she blew Ethan a kiss in response. "Ladies and gentlemen, the third competition is about to begin." Bagman's enthusiastic announcement echoed through the crowd, eliciting thunderous applause. Following his introduction, the illusion-generating device ceased playing commercials, shifting focus to the dueling platform at the center of the Quidditch field. "Our 6 warriors have now entered the arena," Bagman declared. As his words faded, the figures of the 6 warriors appeared in the illusion high above. The operator of the magical device seemed particularly fond of Fleur Delacour, as her image dominated the screen. Her slightly pursed cherry lips and the adorable pout made her Vila charm even more captivating. The audience was instantly mesmerized, their collective breaths taken away by her sheer allure. At that moment, Fleur's expression transformed from annoyance to joy, her smile blossoming like a spring flower. The half-Vila's enchanting smile radiated warmth, leaving the audience spellbound. As she blew a kiss in a certain direction, the crowd was left in awe, wondering who the lucky recipient of her affection might be. Sensing the audience's curiosity, the operator attempted to follow Fleur's gaze with the magical device. Just as Ethan was about to be revealed on the big screen, he realized what was happening. Acting quickly, he snapped his fingers and thought, "Sorry, Principal, please assist me." Instantly, the magical device was redirected, focusing instead on the 3 principals seated across the coaching bench, sparing Ethan from exposure. Could the magic props made by Ethan himself have some backdoors? At this moment, Principal Dumbledore was dozing off, caught off guard when the camera suddenly turned to him. His sleeping figure was immediately broadcast live, eliciting laughter from the audience. This clever diversion shifted the audience's attention. Shortly after, the voice of host Ludo Bagman filled the air. "The game is about to begin. Please allow me to introduce the rules of the game to everyone." The wizards in the stands responded with warm applause. As the applause faded away, Bagman's voice emerged once more, calm and clear. "The third game of the Tri-Wizard tournament will be quite different from the previous 2. This time, we are moving away from the referee's subjective ratings, making the players' performance the sole criterion for judgment. The competition will follow a single round-robin format, featuring a total of 15 thrilling duels. Each champion will face off against 5 other contestants in a series of one-on-one battles, ensuring fairness and impartiality. He paused, allowing the audience to absorb the information, then continued. In each duel, the competitors will vie for a total of 2 points. The victor will claim both points, while the loser will walk away empty-handed. In the event of a draw, each contestant will be awarded 1 point. Only those who triumph in all 5 duels will achieve the honor of a perfect score. Next, let's discuss the schedule of the games, Ludo went on, his voice maintaining its gentle and rhythmic quality. To ensure that the contestants can compete under optimal conditions, we have spread the competition across 3 days, with a total of 5 matches. Each day will feature a session in the morning and another in the evening, with the morning of the 3rd day hosting the final session. During each session, 3 matches will take place. In a single session, 6 champions will compete in pairs, with each champion participating in 1 game. The camera then panned to show the vibrant scene at the venue. Chapter 402. After introducing the competition system, Bagman announced, "Next, I would like to invite the competition's referee and safety officer, the Deputy Director of the Auror Office, Miss Nymphadora Tonks, to announce the rules of the duel." Dressed in her crisp white Auror uniform, Tonks walked onto the podium, eliciting another round of cheers. The memory of her, clad in the same uniform on the night of the World Cup, commanding the Aurors and Golems with calm precision and ultimately cornering and defeating the thugs, was still fresh in everyone's mind. Since that battle, Tonks had become a celebrated figure. "Hello, everyone. My name is Nymphadora Tonks," she began, her tone serious and her demeanor a stark contrast to her usually playful nature. "There are only 4 rules for dueling." Her voice was clear and authoritative. First, the determination of victory or defeat. When a duelist cannot stand up to effectively resist within 10 seconds, or falls off the duel stage, they are considered defeated. The winner must cease all attacks at this point. She paused before continuing. Secondly, the determination of a tie. If both duelists lose the ability to resist simultaneously, fall off the duel platform together, or if there is no winner within 15 minutes, the duel will be recorded as a draw. Regarding the use of magic props and potions, her tone grew stern. In the duel arena, the wand is the only permitted weapon. Duelists are not allowed to use any magic props or take magic potions to enhance their abilities. After the duel, only recovery magic and potions provided by the organizer's designated healer from St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries are permitted for treating wounds. All other potions are prohibited. Finally, she raised her voice, imbuing her words with seriousness and solemnity. I particularly want to emphasize that the use of the 3 unforgivable curses in a duel is absolutely prohibited. This is a strict rule, and any violator will face severe punishment. Tonks did not mention the issue of black magic. Dumbledore had considered banning it, but decided against it, knowing it would provoke Durmstrang, who saw it as their advantage. After Tonks stepped down, Bagman resumed his position. Next, I announce that the 3rd task of the Triwizard Tournament has officially begun. Let the first duel commence. With Bagman's enthusiastic announcement and the audience's cheers, the competition began. The first duel was between Hogwarts' Harry Potter and Durmstrang's Polyakov. Referee Tonks positioned herself at the center line of the dueling stage, with Harry and Polyakov entering from opposite sides to face each other. Harry, wand in hand, focused intently on his opponent, his mind wandering back to Sirius's encouragement from the previous night. Harry, you are already very powerful. As long as you perform normally, most young wizards will be no match for you, Sirius had said after their last duel training session. In Harry's eyes, Sirius was indeed a formidable duelist, yet he harbored some doubts about his godfather's assessment. It seemed to Harry that Sirius was judging from an outdated perspective, underestimating the capabilities of their generation of young wizards. This was especially evident during his training sessions with Ethan, where Harry and his fellow competitors were consistently challenged by a variety of young wizards, serving as sparring partners. Ethan's strength was not as weak as Sirius had suggested. Setting aside Hermione and Fleur for the moment, who were indeed formidable warriors, Ethan struggled even against the less experienced wizards who occasionally served as his sparring partners. For instance, his crush Zhang Chu and Ravenclaw's Luna Lovegood both outperformed him, despite being at Ethan's level of training. It was a revelation for Lee to see Ginny Weasley's dueling prowess. The once tearful girl beside him had matured significantly. Even Ethan's roommate, Steve, and Slytherin's junior, Astoria Greengrass, could match him in duels. His victories were mostly limited to Gabrielle Delacour and Draco Malfoy. However, defeating Gabrielle hardly counted as a testament to his strength, given she was only a first-year student. After a series of defeats, Ethan was uncertain about his own capabilities. He began to see Sirius's comments not as criticism, but as encouragement, never having fully appreciated the exceptional talent of those training him. "Potter, Potter!" Tonks's voice snapped Ethan out of his reverie, and he realized he was still on the dueling stage. "Sorry, ma'am," Ethan replied with an awkward smile. "I was a bit distracted." Tonks, mistaking his distraction for nervousness, reassured him. "Don't worry, Harry. I'm here. If there's any danger, I'll intervene immediately, so there's no need to fear injury." Ethan nodded in gratitude, his focus returning to the duel at hand. Tonks resumed her position, her wand raised high. "Both sides take your places." At her signal, a burst of magical fireworks shot into the sky. As the fireworks exploded, the 4 pillars surrounding the duel stage illuminated, and invisible barriers rose, sealing off the area. Ethan and Polyakov wasted no time. "Expelliarmus!" Ethan cast, while Polyakov countered with a thunderbolt explosion. Polyakov, a Durmstrang wizard, aimed to end the duel with a single powerful dark spell. However, his spell was too slow for Ethan, who, with his seeker's agility honed by Ethan's training, dodged the attack effortlessly. The misaimed spell struck the barrier, which absorbed the explosion entirely. These barriers, Ethan's own creation, were designed to prevent any magic from penetrating, effectively neutralizing spells like Polyakov's. Ethan's disarming spell, swift and precise, caught Polyakov off guard. Unable to dodge, Polyakov resorted to the Iron Armor Curse, which blocked Ethan's attack, but left him momentarily stunned by the spell's backlash. Ethan's follow-up stun spell forced Polyakov to evade in a less dignified manner, highlighting that in dueling, power was not the sole factor. Mastering the battle's rhythm was crucial. This principle was something Ethan emphasized during his training sessions with the three warriors. Within just 2 rounds, Polyakov was overwhelmed, a clear indication that Ethan's combat skills were far from negligible. He thought, "I've underestimated the enemy too much." Whirlwind. Despite his awkward position, Polyakov, undeterred, summoned a gust of wind from the ground. Caught off guard, Harry was pelted with flying sand and rocks, forcing him to shield his face with his hands and struggle to maintain his footing. This gave Polyakov the chance to rise and regroup. The audience was captivated by the series of impressive exchanges between the two combatants in such a short span. While the spells they employed weren't particularly powerful, duels aren't solely about the strength or the spectacle of magic. Indeed, this battle of wits and bravery was proving to be equally thrilling. Principal Dumbledore, although Harry from your school became a warrior somewhat unexpectedly, his prowess truly merits the title, Mrs. Maxim remarked, observing the ongoing duel with admiration. Unlike the first match, where luck played a significant part, and the second, which involved more straightforward tactics, this was the first instance where Harry demonstrated skills that genuinely impressed her. "Thank you, Madame Maxime. Harry indeed has room for improvement," Dumbledore responded, his eyes twinkling with mirth, his tone modest yet proud. It was clear he was pleased to see the chosen savior's abilities evolving. Their exchange completely overlooked Karkaroff, whose expression soured. He had hoped the third task would showcase the strengths of the Durmstrang contender, skilled in dark magic. Yet, Harry's performance against Polyakov had him fretting over Krumm's prospects. On the field, the battle intensified with each passing moment. Polyakov, with his age and specialized training in dark magic, wielded more potent curses and had a larger reserve of magical power, often seizing the initiative. However, Harry's agility gave him an edge. Lacking mastery in dark magic didn't hinder him. He was adept with a wide array of spells, executing them with swift precision. His attacks, though not the most powerful, posed a significant threat. The duel reached a deadlock, a testament to the skill and determination of both competitors. The scene was a vivid display of magical combat, showcasing not just the spells, but the strategic minds behind them. Chapter 403. The duel continues. Polyakov was growing increasingly irritated. In his view, Harry fought with the elusive agility of a loach, evading attacks with frustrating proficiency. The more they battled, the angrier Polyakov became. In a burst of frustration, he unleashed a powerful thunderbolt explosion from his wand, aiming directly at Harry. This time, however, Harry opted not to dodge. Instead, he countered with an obstacle curse, casting it at a distance to maximize its effectiveness. The red sparks from Polyakov's curse met the invisible barrier mid-flight and detonated prematurely, sending the majority of the blast back towards Polyakov. The force of the explosion pushed him back, while a deafening boom enveloped the dueling area in thick smoke, obscuring the view for the anxious audience. The students of Durmstrang, especially those who had placed their bets on Polyakov, watched with bated breath, trying to discern the outcome through the smoke. Karkaroff, unable to contain his anxiety, clenched his hands, his forehead beating with sweat, contemplating an intervention on Polyakov's behalf. Then, through the smoke, Polyakov's voice rang out with a determined spell. Thousands of bullets fired. The Durmstrang community sighed in relief as Polyakov ingeniously used the debris from the explosion to counterattack, demonstrating a moment of brilliant spell coordination. A barrage of stones, like shotgun pellets, flew towards Harry. Unperturbed, Harry responded with a calm incantation. Whirlwind. Mirroring Polyakov's earlier use of the wind curse, Harry showcased a masterclass in spell countering. A powerful whirlwind materialized, swiftly turning the tide of the attack. The stones, now caught in the gale, were hurled back at Polyakov, transforming from projectiles to liabilities. Polyakov, caught off guard by Harry's adept handling, found himself battered and bloodied. The whirlwind also had the unintended effect of clearing the smoke from the field, leaving Polyakov exposed. With no cover, Harry seized the moment. Expelliarmus! His signature disarming curse flew true, striking Polyakov and sending his wand flying out of the arena. Polyakov, now visibly defeated, knelt on the ground, clutching his stomach and face. Under normal circumstances, the duel would have been called in favor of Harry the moment Polyakov was disarmed. However, Tonks, the referee, remained silent, considering the potential for animagus transformations or wandless magic. The rules did not dictate a loss upon being disarmed. Yet Polyakov, lacking the ability to transform or cast spells without his wand, wisely conceded, sparing himself further injury and preserving his condition for future challenges. Competition is over. Harry Potter wins. Tonks finally declared, marking the end of an exhilarating duel. Polyakov, struggling to his feet, faced Harry with a mix of resentment and respect. Despite his defeat, he couldn't help but acknowledge the skill of his younger opponent. Ethan stood across the way, struggling to accept his defeat. Just before the game, he had been plotting a triumphant performance to redeem himself after 2 consecutive disappointing showings. Yet, the outcome was unexpectedly dramatic. Far from a killing spree, he couldn't even best Harry Potter. Reflecting on this, he couldn't help but laugh at himself. Was he the real clown here? The young wizards of Hogwarts erupted into thunderous cheers, filling the auditorium with applause. Ron, caught up in the excitement, jumped up and shouted, "Harry! Well done!" Despite the distance, Harry heard Ron's voice clearly for the first time. He looked up and waved to Ron in the crowd. However, this gesture turned the cheers into bursts of teasing and strange screams. Someone even shouted, "Harry will dedicate this victory to Ron Weasley." At that, Harry's mood darkened, and he walked off the duel stage with a sour expression, his victory joy completely extinguished. Ethan, meanwhile, managed to compose himself, picked up his wand, and walked alone to the rest area. "Ethan, why did you lose?" "Don't do that! It's so miserable!" The stands in Durmstrang were filled with wails, and many young wizards let out shrill screams, stirring a mix of emotions in those who heard them. Ethan looked at them, puzzled. Having been Karkaroff's teaching assistant for a long time, essentially a snitch, he wasn't well liked by his classmates. Yet, seeing so many concerned for him was moving, despite his reputation. Perhaps it was his status as a competitor that changed their perception. Moved by their concern, Ethan approached the stands and reassured the students, "Don't worry, everyone. I won't lose any of the next games." The students of Durmstrang were visibly moved, some nearly in tears. "What's the point of winning next? We have no money left to bet." After a 5-minute intermission, an Auror stepped forward to cast the Restore Curse, Repair Spell, and Transformation, to return the playing field to its original state. During this break, half-vampire singer Loken Demines performed By Your Side in the center of the court, eliciting screams from the witches in attendance. Inviting celebrities to perform during halftime was an idea Ethan had after observing Muggle sports competitions, and it proved to be a huge success. With Loken Demines' performance concluded, the second game commenced. Hermione Granger from Hogwarts faced Estella Dumont from Beauxbatons. Following the thrilling match between Harry and Ethan, this duel seemed somewhat lackluster. It wasn't that their magical skills were lacking, but the gap in their abilities was too significant. Hermione, without moving from her spot, quickly defeated Estella with a few spells, leaving the audience silent. Such a one-sided match was unappealing to watch. Loken Demines, having just finished his performance, was unexpectedly called back to the stage, much to his annoyance. He suspected he was being pranked by Sai-Fang. As the Aurors worked on the dueling platform, Karkaroff seized the moment to pull Krum aside and offer some advice. "The next one you will face is the hybrid Vila," Karkaroff said, a hint of concern in his voice. "You must always be wary of her charm magic and not let it affect you." Krum responded with a confident smile, ready for the challenge. "Professor, there's no need to worry," I assured him confidently. "I'm a Bulgarian wizard. In Bulgaria, we've encountered Vilas quite frequently and have long since become accustomed to their abilities. This level of charm magic is hardly noteworthy to me." Karkaroff, observing Krum's confident demeanor, felt a wave of relief wash over him. However, Their conversation was soon interrupted by another presence in the dueling field. Ethan, who was on the sidelines, couldn't help but stifle a laugh upon overhearing their exchange. He had initially suspected Krum and Karkaroff of plotting something underhanded, prompting him to send Iwu, his invisible detective, to eavesdrop through their shared senses. To his amusement, their concerns were merely about Fleur's charm magic, a worry he found overly cautious. Since deepening his relationship with Ethan, Fleur had made a solemn promise that her charm magic would be reserved for him alone, excluding, of course, any unintentional effects. Fleur's Vila heritage endowed her with a broad spectrum of magical talents beyond mere charm spells, encompassing the entire spectrum of enchantment and control magic. To acknowledge Fleur's abilities, Ethan had shared with her numerous enchantment and control spells. Moreover, charm magic wasn't limited to a single approach. It included spells like Charm Humans and Charm Monsters, aimed at increasing friendliness, Calm, which was used to soothe allies, and Suggestion and Commanding Technique, which involved hypnotic psychological suggestion. More forceful spells like Dominate Human Beings and Dominate Monster allowed for comprehensive control over adversaries. Focusing solely on the more superficial aspects of charm magic, as some did, overlooked its true depth and versatility. Crew, Ems, and Karkaroff, it seemed, were largely ignorant of the nuances of charm and control spells. Meanwhile, Fleur had already taken her place on the dueling stage, greeting Krum with a polite nod as he arrived. The duel was about to commence, signaled by Tonks launching a brilliant magical firework into the air, marking the start of another thrilling contest. Chapter 404. The Duel Begins. At the start of the game, Fleur did not immediately launch an attack to gain the upper hand, as the warriors in the previous two games had done. Instead, she methodically waved her wand, casting layers of protective spells and enhancements upon herself. Mage Armor, Frost Armor, Highly Increased Resistance, Arcane Wisdom. Sun Tzu once said, "Those who were good at fighting in the past first made themselves invincible and then waited for an opportunity to defeat the enemy." To win, one must first ensure their survival and then consider their offensive strategy. Clearly, Fleur was employing Ethan's favored tactic, having mastered it completely. Krum had originally planned to counter his opponent's spells with the Iron Armor Curse and then launch his attack. However, he was caught off guard when Fleur did not act as he had anticipated, rendering his prepared curse ineffective. As he watched magical lights envelop her, Krum's anxiety grew, realizing he could not allow her to continue unchallenged. He finally waved his wand, unleashing powerful dark magic. Shattered to pieces. Shield! Fleur, in the midst of casting her buffs, did not neglect her defense, promptly using shield technique to block the attack. Oolong Dispatch! Seizing the moment, Krum summoned a huge black snake with another spell, intending it to both obscure his movements and attack Fleur. He assumed that Fleur, like many girls, would be terrified of snakes, hoping to inflict both physical and psychological damage. As the black snake advanced, Krum coordinated its attack with another spell, Torn Apart. Durmstrang's spectators erupted into cheers, impressed by Krum's aggressive opening moves. However, Fleur did not evade his magic. Instead, she faced the black snake head-on, her beautiful silver eyes glaring into its own without a hint of fear. The split curse hit her directly, but to Krum's astonishment, instead of the expected gruesome outcome, only a burst of snowflakes appeared, leaving no trace of damage. The black snake inexplicably turned on Krum. "Damn, is her charm so powerful it even affects snakes?" he thought, but he had no time to ponder as the snake, now a mere 2 meters away, turned against him. Knowing the venomous nature of the creature he had summoned, Krum acted swiftly. Raging Fire. Flames erupted from his wand, engulfing the black snake and reducing it to ashes. He then manipulated the flames into a wall, temporarily obstructing their view of each other. Krum was dismayed. Fleur had effortlessly neutralized his assault in a manner he couldn't comprehend. The cheers from Durmstrang had faded into silence. After a moment's hesitation, Krum decided not to launch another immediate attack. Instead, he began muttering an incantation, preparing a powerful spell. It took 3 seconds for him to complete it. By then, Fleur had already dispelled his wall of fire with a clear spring curse. Undeterred, Krum pointed his wand at the ground, summoning a purple-black magical flame that surged towards Fleur. The flame scorched the floor, leaving behind a trail of scorch marks and cracks. Mrs. Maxim, observing the duel, turned to Professor Karkaroff with a frown. "This must be Li Huo, right?" Karkaroff displayed no anger upon hearing Maxim's questioning tone. Instead, he responded with a hint of pride. "I recall that when the rules were announced, only the unforgivable curses were banned. Fiendfire is not an unforgivable curse." Mrs. Maxim was rendered speechless by this revelation and looked at Fleur with concern. Indeed, Fiendfire is not classified as an unforgivable curse, but it is a powerful dark magic that carries a curse within it, capable of destroying Horcruxes. However, Fiendfire also has a significant drawback. It is notoriously difficult to control. A wizard lacking sufficient skill often incurs self-damage due to their inability to control it or their lack of knowledge of the counter-curse, leading to unintended destruction. Only a highly skilled wizard can manage it with precision. As a result, even Crumb dared not conjure too much of it, opting to summon only a small area. The audience in the stands was abuzz with excitement, having not anticipated witnessing such a display of dark magic on the Tri-Wizard tournament stage. Confronted with the menacing Fiendfire, Fleur immediately retreated. She was well aware of the curse's formidable power, but did not know the counter-curse, nor had she learned it from Ethan. Her only option to counter this fire-based spell was to quickly defeat Crumb. Thus, she began to chant her own spell. Crumb, realizing that Fleur was preparing a powerful spell of her own, focused his energy on directing the Fiendfire towards her. The black flames morphed into a rhinoceros made of fire, charging at Fleur. However, what happened next took Crumb by surprise. When the Fiendfire rhinoceros approached Fleur, it was halted as if blocked by some force. In reality, this was the effect of multiple resistance magics enhanced by a frost armor spell. The frost armor, though gradually consumed by the Fiendfire, managed to hold it back temporarily. This was a technique Crumb had never encountered before, and it left not only him but also the principals and professors at the judges' table in astonishment. Seeing the Fiendfire halted in its tracks before Fleur, Karkaroff grew restless. "Madame Maxime, is this a secret technique of your school?" The other principals turned their attention to Maxim, curious about this unfamiliar method. Maxim, however, shook her head in confusion. "I'm not sure. Fleur trained independently. She hasn't disclosed where she learned this." Her gaze then shifted to Ethan, whose expression remained impassive. Dumbledore and the others followed her gaze, falling into a thoughtful silence. Ethan showed no outward reaction, but internally he was pleased. Fleur had made significant progress recently. In the stands, Crumb grew increasingly anxious as he saw the Fiendfire's advance halted. He poured more magical power into the spell, attempting to push it forward, but to no avail. The frost armor spell was proving to be effective for the time being. Fleur, having completed her spell, elegantly raised her wand and pointed it at Crumb. Suddenly, Crumb felt an overwhelming desire to step off the dueling stage. The thought perplexed him. Stepping off would mean admitting defeat, but was losing truly such a terrible outcome? Convincing himself that everything would be all right if he just stepped down, Crumb turned and leaped off the stage with surprising agility. Before the audience could fully grasp what was happening, Crumb had already conceded the match. On the stage, the condor spread its wings and charged towards Crumb with intense heat. Fleur Delacour wins. Tonks immediately announced the match's outcome. The audience, along with Victor Crumb, was left bewildered by the sudden end of the duel. Crumb, feeling disoriented upon stepping down, soon realized the folly of his decision. Karkaroff, observing from the sidelines, was equally perplexed. He couldn't fathom why Crumb, who had been performing exceptionally, would concede defeat so abruptly. The confusion among the spectators, school heads, and participants on the Quidditch field was palpable. However, it didn't take long for the crowd to react. A wave of accusations and curses erupted from the stands. "Shadow, there's foul play in this game. This match is a sham. Crumb, how could you do this to us? Refund our money." 367. Karkaroff vehemently protested. "It's the Imperious curse. The Bobans player must have used an unforgivable curse, forcing Crumb to withdraw. I demand a thorough investigation by the referee." Crumb, the person at the center of the controversy, was visibly shaken. He had taken a gamble by using the fire curse in the duel, a spell he hadn't fully mastered. To maintain control during the duel, he deliberately reduced the spell's intensity. However, seeing Fleur withstand the attack sent him into a panic, leading him to inadvertently increase the spell's power beyond his control. Even so, he might have managed to maintain it if he hadn't been completely overpowered by his opponent, losing any ability to control the spell's magnitude and form. The situation escalated when the uncontrollable blaze, initially contained, erupted into a wild inferno on the stage. Fleur, having just exited, found herself encircled by the ferocious flames. Her silhouette flickered in the firelight, seemingly on the brink of being engulfed. This dramatic scene, broadcast live and witnessed by the audience, silenced the previous uproar. Everyone was stunned, unable to comprehend the unfolding disaster. In a state of panic, Krum attempted to regain control of the fire curse, only to realize he had lost all connection to it. Powerless, he watched the flames ravage the stage, overwhelmed by guilt and despair. Tonks acted swiftly, chanting a counterspell in an effort to quell the flames. Thanks to her intervention, the fire's intensity began to wane. However, rescuing Fleur from the midst of the inferno seemed nearly impossible. As the new month begins, I kindly ask for your support through custom orders, flowers, monthly tickets, and reviews. Your votes are incredibly important to me as the author. Chapter 405. In the midst of the fierce fire, Fleur's face was illuminated by the firelight, turning a shade of purple, and her eyes were filled with fear and despair. At this critical moment, Fleur's body was enveloped in the third layer of the frost armor technique. The layers of frost emitted a cold breath amidst the firelight, striving to fend off the relentless assault of the flames. However, the fire's erosion accelerated, resembling a vast abyssal maw that devoured everything in its path, relentlessly gnawing at Fleur's defenses. Fleur found herself unable to replenish the frost armor technique as quickly as the fire consumed it. The once impenetrable frost armor had now thinned to the fragility of an eggshell, seemingly on the verge of shattering at any moment. In this dire situation, Fleur desperately sought a way out. Every spell she knew flashed through her mind, only to realize that nothing but the continuous casting of frost armor could save her. Tears glistened in the firelight, revealing her longing for life and her dread of death. As the last layer of frost armor technique was nearly consumed by the flames, leaving her no time to cast another, Fleur's heart plummeted into despair. Just as she was about to surrender to her fate and close her eyes to await death, an astonishing sight unfolded before her. Miraculously, a wide path cleared through the inferno, as if the god of fire himself had carved a safe passage amidst the raging flames. In the midst of this path stood a familiar figure rushing towards her. It was Ethan. His arrival was like the break of dawn, scattering the darkness in Fleur's heart. All her perseverance and despair transformed into boundless joy and peace. Unable to contain her excitement, Fleur dashed towards Ethan like a swallow returning to its nest, embracing him without hesitation. You're finally here." Fleur nestled tightly in Ethan's arms, feeling his warmth and the solidness of his chest. Although her face still bore traces of fear and panic, in Ethan's embrace, she gradually found calm and a sense of security. Ethan gazed down at Fleur, his eyes brimming with love. He gently stroked her hair, whispering words of comfort. "It's okay. Everything is over now. I'm here. I'll always be by your side to protect you." After reassuring her, Ethan looked around. With a casual wave of his hand towards the metal pillars at the four corners of the duel field, a faint light flickered unnoticed. The fierce fire that had raged moments before quickly dissipated like a candle flame in a strong wind, vanishing completely within seconds. The duel field, having endured a nightmare, bore only scorch marks as silent witnesses to the ordeal. The figures of Ethan and Fleur, locked in an embrace, were captured and magnified on the magic screen, displayed before every spectator. The screen showed Fleur giving Ethan a passionate kiss. The audience, finally understanding to whom Fleur's pre-game kiss was meant, could no longer doubt Ethan's worthiness. In the eyes of many, it was Fleur who was the fortunate one. Even Fleur's most ardent fans had to silently endure the heartache of seeing their idol with the yellow-haired boy, relegating their complaints to the depths of their hearts. In light of Ethan's astonishing feat, their grievances seemed trivial. Moments ago, this young wizard had parted the raging fire as if he were Moses parting the Red Sea, effortlessly extinguishing the flames that engulfed the field with a mere gesture. Such a feat suggested a level of power akin to that of legendary wizards like Dumbledore and Voldemort, raising the question of whether this fourth-year student possessed strength comparable to such illustrious figures. At such a young age, disbelief was the common sentiment among the spectators, yet they were compelled to accept the truth unfolding before their eyes. The arcane eyes in the sky had recorded everything, leaving no room for doubt. In the coaching bench, Mrs. Maxim and Karkaroff watched Ethan in stunned silence, their expressions a mix of horror and disbelief. They had always known Ethan was formidable, but the display of his strength had elevated their estimation of him to a new level. A sense of relief washed over them, grateful they had preemptively banned this formidable competitor from the Triwizard tournament. Dumbledore, on the other hand, watched Ethan with a dark, contemplative gaze. His thoughts drifted to the past, to two wizards who had also mastered the art of controlling violent fire with such finesse, Gellert Grindelwald and Tom Riddle. In another part of the stands, Gabrielle was nearly overcome with relief, having feared for her sister's safety amidst the flames. The sight of Fleur, safe and sound, brought her immense joy. The other spectators, caught up in the emotional reunion, couldn't help but feel a mix of romance and envy at the scene before them. Ethan, holding Fleur close, made his way off the duel stage, intending to find a quiet place for her to recover from the ordeal. However, they were intercepted by Karkaroff, with Krum in tow. Ethan, without even looking up, asked in a low voice laden with an intimidating undertone, "What's up?" Karkaroff, trembling under Ethan's gaze, managed to say, "Sorry, Mr. Green, I didn't mean to stop you, but it's just that Miss Delacour seemed to have used the Imperious Curse on Krum." Ethan's eyes narrowed sharply as he interrupted. "You mean to accuse Fleur of using an unforgivable curse? That's a grave accusation. Do you have any proof?" Karkaroff, stammering, tried to defend his claim. Krum said he was compelled to step off the stage. What else but the Imperious Curse could do that? "That's right, Ethan. Don't try to defend her," Krum added, looking directly at Ethan with a boldness that seemed to surpass his principles. Ethan scoffed. "You're mistaken. That wasn't the Imperious Curse. It was the domination of humanity. While similar in effect, the latter is not considered dark magic." "This is preposterous," Karkaroff exclaimed, incredulous. "I've been a principal for many years and have never heard of such a spell." "That's because it's Ethan's own creation," Fleur interjected, her voice filled with pride. Karkaroff, momentarily emboldened in Fleur's presence, scoffed. "Create your own magic? That's absurd. Don't expect me to believe such nonsense." Before Karkaroff could continue his tirade, Ethan's cold gaze silenced him. His eyes glazed over, and his voice, now hollow, echoed Ethan's command. "Karkaroff, let it go." To the astonishment of Krum and the confusion of the onlookers, Karkaroff abruptly changed his tone. "Okay, go, ignore this." And with unexpected agility, he retreated. When Karkaroff's eyes regained their usual shrewdness, he immediately clutched his waist and howled in pain. What did you make me do? Ah, my poor back." His lack of exercise meant that the backflip had nearly crippled him. It wasn't until this moment that Krum snapped out of his daze. He pointed at Ethan angrily. "Now I finally understand why Miss Delacour didn't hesitate to use the Imperious Curse in the competition. It was all your influence." But Ethan ignored him and addressed Karkaroff. "So, Principal Igor, after years of being a principal and indulging in comforts, you should know what a real Imperious Curse looks like, right?" I understand." Under Krum's puzzled gaze, Karkaroff nodded in despair and then pulled Krum away, showing no desire to continue the argument. Krum, however, was not ready to let it go. "Hey, Mr. Karkaroff, why are we leaving? Why don't we hold them accountable? They did this in public." "Krum, shut up!" Karkaroff's voice boomed like thunder, the first time he had ever interrupted his pupil so abruptly, and I'm telling you, that was not the Imperious Curse. Miss Delacour did not break any rules. Karkaroff wanted to avoid further entanglement, not only because he had personally experienced that it wasn't the Imperious Curse, but also because he realized Ethan might know his dark secret. Karkaroff knew that continuing this confrontation would only bring haste in misfortune. However, Krum was stubborn as an ox. Once he set his mind on something, it was hard to change his course. "No, I don't believe it," he retorted loudly. "She clearly used the Imperious Curse, and Ethan Green used it on you in public. We can report them to the British Ministry of Magic and have them all sent to Azkaban." At that moment, Krum's heart was not just filled with anger and unwillingness, but also the humiliation of losing the Quidditch final, the frustration of not winning Hermione's affection, and jealousy that all the beautiful girls seemed to favor Ethan. These emotions ignited a fire within him, blinding him to reason, and making him see this as an opportunity to bring Ethan down. He believed that by exposing Ethan, he could redeem his own shame and show Hermione Ethan's true colors, hoping then she would turn to him. "That's enough, Krum." Karkaroff's voice grew louder, his face contorted with anger. "I said it wasn't the Imperious Curse, and that means it wasn't. Now, let's return to the ship, rest, and prepare for tonight's event. Don't embarrass yourself further here." This was the first time Karkaroff had reprimanded Krum so harshly. He had always shown favoritism towards his protege, but now Karkaroff realized how reckless and foolish Krum could be. Chapter 406, The Magic in Krum Called Domination of Humanity. This magic, known as Domination of Humanity, was created by Ethan. Its effects bear a resemblance to the Imperious Curse, yet it is not considered dark magic. Not only did Karkaroff accept this explanation, but the broader audience did as well. Their reasoning was straightforward. Given Ethan's immense power and his effortless handling of the formidable Li Huo, it seemed entirely plausible that he could invent a benign variant of the soul-impairing curse. This belief was further reinforced when Tonks publicly used the pre-flashback curse on Fleur's wand. In light of this, the host Bagman was visibly relieved. As long as the audience remained untroubled, the Triwizard Tournament could proceed without casting a shadow over the Ministry of Magic or the Magical Sports Company's reputation. Despite Cornelius Fudge's ineffectiveness as minister, Bagman was determined not to let the Department of Magical Sports falter under his watch. After all, future sponsorships and his own financial gains depended on the department's success. Having navigated through the crisis of confidence, Bagman enthusiastically announced the conclusion of the first game and the commencement of the next at 8 o'clock that evening. The 3-day duel schedule was a whirlwind of excitement, with Hermione, Fleur, and Harry Potter standing out as the most brilliant performers. Hermione Granger, in particular, was widely regarded as the favorite to win the championship. Throughout the round-robin duel, she was unstoppable, affirming her status as the top witch at Hogwarts under Ethan's tutelage. She consistently overpowered her opponents, rendering them unconscious within a few rounds, without once resorting to her magical animagus transformation. Despite their efforts to limit her mobility, Hermione's opponents quickly realized that their strategies were futile. Her mastery of magic alone was enough to defeat them, rendering their fears of her animagus transformation irrelevant. These opponents, though earnest in their attempts, were ultimately no match for her prowess. Fleur, on the other hand, excelled in control spells, leaving her opponents either asleep on the field or in a state of panic. Polyakov, who had provoked Fleur with his insults, suffered the most humiliating defeat and was only restored to his normal state after Karkaroff's personal apology. Both Hermione and Fleur dominated the duel competition with their unbeaten records, setting the stage for a highly anticipated showdown on the final day. Harry Potter emerged as the dark horse of the tournament. Despite being the only fourth-year wizard and facing criticism for his previous performances, Harry proved his detractors wrong in the third game. By defeating Polyakov and Estella, he demonstrated that his success was not a matter of luck or reliance on others, but a testament to his own skill and determination. Warrior. Regarding losing to Hermione and Fleur, if he loses, then so be it. It's not as if no one else can defeat them. Among the 3 remaining contestants, Polyakov sadly lost all his matches, once again trailing in the competition. Krum and Estella each secured a victory. Krum triumphed over Polyakov, his schoolmate. However, Estella employed cunning tactics to outwit Krum, which infuriated Karkaroff. Unlike Hermione, a Vila hybrid who failed to enchant Krum, Estella succeeded. It was a regrettable deception. Time flew, and the third day of competition, marking the final event, finally arrived. Today's duel featured Hermione and Fleur, the two strongest contenders and most admired beauties. Their confrontation was highly anticipated. The idea of a battle between beauties thrilled everyone. Hogwarts was abuzz with rumors about Hermione and Ethan's ambiguous relationship. Meanwhile, the memory of Fleur and Ethan's passionate kiss on the first day of the match fueled a sense of rivalry. Yet this did not detract from the excitement of the duel, making it even more intriguing. By 8 in the morning, spectators began filling the stadium's auditorium. At 9:30, the day's duel commenced. The first match pitted Krum against Harry Potter. This game, fueled by gossip, was almost as captivating as the match between Hermione and Fleur. The difference lay in the fact that while Hermione and Fleur seemed to vie for Ethan's attention, Krum and Potter's rivalry was more complex. To the audience, it appeared they were competing for Ron Weasley's affection. Media reports had sensationalized a love triangle involving Harry, Ron, and Krum, spreading across Europe. Even Krum's parents from Bulgaria inquired if their son harbored feelings for Ron, expressing their open-mindedness and acceptance. Despite the rumors, Krum and Potter denied any romantic interest in Ron. However, their rivalry was undeniable, as they both had a connection to the same individual, Ronnie Weasley, who, amusingly, was Ron himself. Once on stage, their rivalry was palpable, each determined to outdo the other. Their intense duel lasted 15 minutes, ending in the competition's first draw. The thrilling match captivated the audience, who initially attended for the Hermione versus Fleur match, but found the opening battle equally worthwhile. The intermission featured a performance by the renowned band Weird Sisters, which ignited another wave of excitement. The second duel saw Durmstrang's Polyakov face off against Beauxbaton's Estella. Polyakov, determined and focused, took the match seriously. In a pregame interview, he reflected on his initial defeat against Harry Potter, recalling the disheartened faces of his classmates. That moment fueled his resolve to win subsequent matches, despite facing a series of losses. Now, with the final game ahead, Polyakov considered it his last chance for victory. He believed in Durmstrang's legacy, shaped significantly by Grindelwald, and felt it was his duty to restore the school's glory. For Polyakov, winning was not just about personal achievement, but also about honoring the support and expectations of his peers, even if their tears were merely a response to misplaced bets. As the duel commenced, Polyakov, breaking from his usual tactics, was the first to launch an attack with the disarming curse. Having participated in numerous rounds of competition, Polyakov had come to realize that the potency of a spell was secondary to mastering the rhythm of the duel. He understood that two wizards of comparable strength could secure victory by exploiting their opponent's vulnerabilities. Following Tonks's signal to start, Polyakov unleashed a relentless barrage of disarming curses and stunning spells, overwhelming Estella to the point where she could barely defend herself. Additionally, he adopted Krum's combat style, summoning black snakes with the Oolong out-of-the-hole spell to harass and intimidate her. Polyakov correctly gambled on the fact that not every girl possessed the resilience of Hermione and Fleur. Estella, a young lady from the Dumont family, was indeed terrified at the sight of the black snake, losing her initiative and eventually being knocked unconscious by a powerful blast of dark magic from Polyakov. Tonks declared Polyakov's victory to everyone's surprise. Elated by his win, Polyakov rushed to celebrate with the Hufflepuffs who had supported him, expecting applause and cheers. Instead, he was met with tired, indifferent, and even angry stares. Some spectators openly criticized him, questioning why he had only managed to win now after a series of losses, suggesting they would have preferred his continued defeat. Polyakov was left saddened and confused by the reaction, unable to comprehend why his victory had soured his supporters' opinion of him. Unbeknownst to Polyakov, his so-called supporters were primarily gamblers who had been financially drained. In the days leading up to the duel, every time the betting shop run by Lee Jordan and the Weasley twins opened, a notorious dog named Miss Gabrielle would place a significant bet on Estella, proclaiming her willingness to support her alma mater with her funds. This spurred a wave of bets from both Beauxbaton's and Durmstrang supporters, leading to substantial losses for many. Despite losing 2 consecutive bets, Gabrielle remained undeterred, boldly declaring that the high odds on Estella meant a single victory could recover all her losses. Skeptical at first, many dismissed Gabrielle as foolish or arrogant. However, when Gabrielle invested tenfold in a final bet and Estella triumphed over Crumb, Gabrielle not only recovered her losses, but also made a considerable profit. Regrettably, few had followed her lead, with only 2 of Estella's close friends making a significant gain. The tables had turned, and those who had previously mocked Gabrielle now envied her success. Inspired by her bold strategy, they began to embrace the philosophy of betting big, convinced that fortune favored the brave. The mantra, "Stud is a kind of wisdom," became their rallying cry, believing that victory would elevate them to heroes within their community, while defeat would simply be a setback. However, the harsh reality soon set in. The thrill of placing bets quickly faded as many young wizards found themselves and their peers financially ruined by their gambling habits. This explained the lackluster reception Polyakov received. The spectators were not only physically and emotionally drained, but also resentful. They were frustrated that Polyakov's previous losses had contributed to their financial woes, and his solitary victory did little to amend their dire situation. "Now I have no money left to bet. You knew you were going to win, so why did you even bother going?" One particularly unlucky individual believed he had deciphered the true strength of the competitors. Egged on by someone else, he placed a counter bet in the final game, hoping to recoup his losses by betting against Durmstrang's team. After all, with Polyakov being a seasoned player, it seemed like a sure loss. Yet to everyone's astonishment, Polyakov managed to secure a victory in the last match, causing all the money they had wagered in hopes of making a comeback to vanish. In such a scenario, who else could they blame but him? On the other side, Ethan, the mastermind behind the scenes, along with Lee, who managed the casino, and Jordan, forming a trio, were all sharing sly smiles with Gabri's dog-carrying team, making them a group of 4. They hadn't anticipated that Polyakov would exceed expectations and clinch the last game, thereby netting them an unexpected windfall. All they could say was that they had won. Chapter 407. The dust from the duel between Polyakov and Estella had settled, and the duel stage was swiftly restored to its original state through the staff's magic. During the halftime show, the Weird Sisters took the stage, enchanting the audience with their performance of magic stuff. As the halftime performance concluded, a sense of restlessness began to permeate the crowd. Behind Ethan, the audience buzzed with anticipation and speculation. "It's coming! It's finally here!" someone shouted excitedly. "Yes, I've been waiting all morning for this highlight. Who do you think will win?" another person inquired. "Need I say more? It must be Miss Granger. She wins every game with an absolute advantage," someone confidently predicted. However, not everyone agreed, as another voice chimed in. "That's not necessarily the case. I'm optimistic about Miss Delacour. Her magic of human control is simply too powerful." The showdown between Hermione and Fleur was undeniably the highlight of the event. The staff, fully aware of this, had deliberately scheduled this match as the finale. Listening to the lively discussions about the 2 girls, Ethan felt genuinely happy for them. However, his happiness was short-lived. A sharp female voice suddenly cut through the chatter. "I care more about who Ethan Green supports than this." This question dropped like a bombshell, stirring quite a commotion among the audience. Ethan felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. Such questions are better left unasked. They could provoke unnecessary conflict. For someone like Ethan, these were the kind of dilemmas he preferred to avoid. At that moment, Ethan noticed Zhang Chu's teasing gaze next to him, indicating she had also heard the question. The conversation behind them continued. The female voice playfully asked her husband, "If you were Ethan Green, who of these 2 witches would you support?" Her husband seemed taken aback by the question. After a pause, he responded, "What kind of question is that? I haven't experienced it either." "I just want to know what you men think. Just answer it casually," the female voice coaxed. The male voice chuckled awkwardly. "Well, if I were Ethan Green, I might choose neutrality. After all, it's hard to show partiality when both options are appealing." Unexpectedly, the female's tone turned icy. "Humph, you scumbag." The male voice protested. Hey, you asked me to choose. I didn't tell you to choose both. If you did, you'd definitely be a scumbag in the future, the female retorted. Feeling cornered, the male voice conceded. Then I can only choose one, and I choose Fleur Delacour. Is that enough? Sure enough, men are all superficial scumbags, the female sneered. Tentatively, the male voice asked, Then should I choose Hermione? You don't seem sincere. It looks like you're unwilling, so you chose because I pressured you. You're not sincere at all, the female voice cunningly replied. The male voice grew frustrated. Why are you like this? No matter what I choose, you're not satisfied. What do you want? I just want to see your attitude, the female voice exclaimed. What attitude? Do I have to agree with you to show the right attitude? The male voice argued, growing increasingly agitated. Why are you raising your voice? You're being mean to me, the female accused. Listening to the couple's argument, Ethan's heart twitched. This was a classic dilemma, akin to the question of whom to save first if both your mother and your partner were drowning. Such dilemmas were indeed headache-inducing. Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the man caught in this whirlwind of unreasonableness. He silently vowed never to find himself in a similar situation with an unreasonable partner. However, just as he was feeling somewhat smug about his resolution, Jiangchu's voice eerily echoed in Ethan's ear. By the way, Ethan, I also want to know the answer to this question. Hermione or Fleur, who will you support? Ethan glanced sideways, catching the mischievous smile on Jiangchu's face. It was clear she had asked her question with intention, but Ethan was not one to be easily flustered. He maintained his composure, his expression serious as he admonished. Don't bring up topics that undermine unity in the future. He then inquired, What was the purpose of your question? Did someone put you up to this? Jiangchu was taken aback by Ethan's response, her eyes widening in surprise. She found herself momentarily speechless, clearly not expecting such a reaction. On the stage, Fleur faced Hermione, her heart filled with a sense of rivalry. Having observed Hermione's impressive performances in the first two tasks, Fleur, who had always been proud, refused to accept that she was inferior. She believed that Hermione's advantage stemmed from her earlier association with Ethan, which allowed her to learn more powerful magic. However, after spending time with Ethan and undergoing intensive training for half a month, Fleur felt she had nearly closed the gap in their abilities. They had deliberately avoided competing against each other during training, choosing instead to save the suspense for the official competition. Today, Fleur saw her chance to prove herself. Hermione, sensing Fleur's competitive spirit, was ready for a challenge. She wanted to demonstrate her strength, both as a competitor and as Ethan's girlfriend. As the duel commenced with the burst of red fireworks, Hermione acted swiftly. She waved her wand, launching the first spell. Expelliarmus. The spell, known for disarming an opponent, was one Hermione had mastered to an exceptional degree. She had once used it to single-handedly defeat 7 opponents, leaving a lasting impression on those who witnessed it, including Malfoy, who seemed to shrink at the memory. Fleur, however, remained composed as the spell approached. She quietly chanted a counterspell, and as the red sparks neared, they were halted by an invisible barrier, mingling with snowflakes before dissipating. Fleur's mastery of the frost armor technique had improved significantly since her encounter with the fierce fire. Hermione, undeterred, launched another attack. This time she conjured a massive fireball, a classic spell known for its effectiveness against ice-based defenses. Fleur, learning from past experiences, opted not to use an ice shield. Instead, she summoned an invisible magic shield to block the fireball. The explosion that followed was deafening, shaking the very air around them. The shield shattered under the force, but Fleur remained unscathed, ready to continue the duel. Unscathed by the fierce attack of the fireball, Fleur remained untouched, not a single flame grazing her body. The audience erupted in exclamations, the young wizards astounded by the thrilling spectacle before them. On the stage, Hermione and Fleur stood motionless, the air around them thickening with tension, a palpable sense of impending conflict hanging over them. Hermione's expression was grave. She recognized that Fleur's abilities had significantly advanced since their first encounter. The rapid acquisition of arcane magic by Fleur was unexpected, compelling Hermione to reassess her strategy. For instance, Fleur's use of protection from energy damage to counter the fireball was a testament to her adaptability and perhaps her apprehension of fire-based attacks. However, in the Harry Potter universe, where combat often involves spells like disarming, stunning, or even the killing curse, elemental magic is less common. Fleur's proficiency in such spells highlighted her versatility. Understanding that subtlety would not suffice against Fleur, Hermione knew it was time to demonstrate her mastery. Fleur, sensing Hermione's resolve, began to conjure her own powerful magic. The duel was about to escalate. Hermione took the lead with her exceptional spellcasting speed, invoking Elemental Covenant. A towering water elemental materialized on the stage, its presence exuding a chilling aura reminiscent of the sovereigns of the water elemental realm. The elemental, Standy, 3 meters tall, surged towards Fleur with formidable might, a spell Hermione had learned from Jaina. Fleur responded with confusion, her voice soft but firm. The spell's invisible tendrils bypassed the water elemental, stealthily weaving into Hermione's mind. Hermione immediately sensed the intrusion, her formidable willpower striving to fend off the mental assault. Despite her resilience, Fleur's aptitude in magic control was not to be underestimated. Gradually, Hermione's focus wavered, her speech becoming disjointed under the spell's influence. Yet, Hermione's strategic acumen shone through. Opting for a summoning spell, she called forth a water elemental capable of autonomous combat. Even as the confusion spell muddled her thoughts, the elemental persisted in its assault on Fleur, adhering to Hermione's initial commands. This move was a calculated response to Fleur's control spells, showcasing Hermione's tactical foresight. Fleur, though momentarily disheveled by the elemental's relentless attacks, did not relent. Utilizing frost armor technique to endure the elemental's ice arrow barrages, she then launched a counteroffensive. With levitation spell, she propelled tables and chairs at the elemental like projectiles, simultaneously transforming them into various animals to engage the elemental. However, these makeshift creatures proved no match for the elemental's might, quickly reverting to their inanimate forms. Fleur's strategy was not to defeat the elemental through these minor tactics, but to buy time for her next move. Preparing a powerful 6-ring spell, Instruction, Fleur readied herself for the next phase of their duel, demonstrating her strategic depth and resilience in the face of formidable opposition. Ethan, poised with a magic control spell, was ready to seize control of the monster before him in a single decisive move. "You've lost, Hermione. Prepare to meet your defeat by the very creatures you summoned," he declared confidently, signaling the imminent arrival of his victory. His mental energy surged, effortlessly infiltrating the water elemental's simple spiritual core. The behemoth, now under Ethan's command, immediately turned and launched a deadly attack on Hermione. Following his orders, the creature swiftly formed a new ice arrow in its palm, the air around it chilling with the promise of impending doom. Chapter 408. At that moment, a brilliant magical light flashed through the air, resembling a meteor streaking across the night sky. The water element and the ice arrow it had not yet fully formed gradually dissipated in this light, evaporating without a trace like morning dew under the rising sun. "Is this a summoning cancelled?" Furong watched the scene unfold in astonishment, a sense of unease growing in her heart. "Wait, Hermione, are you no longer under the influence of confusion?" She quickly turned to Hermione, noticing the confusion in her eyes had vanished, replaced by clarity and determination. "No, you've been free from the influence of confusion art for a while. You were just pretending." "But when?" she whispered, realizing she had made a critical mistake by underestimating Hermione's willpower. The water element summoned by Hermione was in fact a clever trap. It not only wasted Furong's precious time, but also successfully baited her into using a high-level magic control spell. Now, the trap had served its purpose, leaving Furong in a highly disadvantageous position. However, it was too late for her to react. Furong could only watch helplessly as Hermione gently waved her hand, and a dispelling magic light enveloped her. The frost armor and mage armor she had meticulously prepared vanished under this light, leaving only a higher resistance enhancement spell struggling to maintain its effect. But the battle was far from over. Hermione didn't seem to need to recite a spell, as her entire being turned into a silver light and vanished. It wasn't that she disappeared, but rather, Furong instinctively turned around and saw the silver mist lighting up behind her, with Hermione's figure emerging from the mist. It was the space spell Falling Step. Furong couldn't understand how Hermione managed to cast the third-level Dispel Magic and the second-level Wandering Step consecutively, but she knew she was at a critical juncture and needed to resort to her most powerful measures. Her silver eyes suddenly shone with magical brilliance, like the brightest stars in the night sky, glaring fiercely at Hermione. Mind-Catching Gaze, a third-level charm control spell that targets a creature, causing them to freeze and stare blankly. Furong had never used this spell before, but now it was activated swiftly and without hesitation. It was clear she had practiced it extensively. This was undoubtedly Furong's hidden ace, a little surprise she had prepared for close-range enemies. However, for Hermione, this surprise seemed feeble. Emerging from the silver mist was Hermione in her animagus form, a cat person with a human outline, but covered in cat fur, with feline limbs and facial features. Furong's confident mind-catching gaze had no effect on the cat person Hermione. Nekomata, being magical creatures with enchantment abilities, and their specialty, Iron Will, allowed them to resist most enchantment-based magic. This also explained why Hermione could break free from the confusion spell earlier than Furong anticipated and secretly prepare magic to ambush her. The failure of this attack marked Furong's defeat. The Catwoman Hermione suddenly lunged forward, her physical strength far surpassing that of a human, and pinned Furong to the ground, causing her wand to slip from her grasp. In the arena, a cat girl was now straddling a silver-haired woman, their eyes locked in an ambiguous gaze. After a long stare, Furong finally turned her head and uttered with difficulty, "I give up." "Miss Delacour admits defeat, and Miss Granger wins this game," Tonks announced the final result. The audience erupted into cheers as Hermione gracefully stood up from Fleur, her form shifting from that of a cat person back to her original human appearance. Extending a hand to Fleur with a gaze filled with kindness and respect, Hermione's gesture was readily accepted by Fleur, who picked up her wand without hesitation, considering Ethan's relationship with them both. "You just used Dispel Magic and Tracking Step consecutively. How did you manage that?" Fleur inquired, her curiosity piqued. "It's a magic called Spell Matrix," Hermione explained, her smile warm. Spell Matrix, a fifth-level transformation system that allows the preparation of a magic matrix capable of storing up to 4 spells of up to 3rd level. These spells are considered spell prompt super magic. Hermione went on to describe an even more advanced spell, the 7th level spell sequence, which can store 4 5th-level spells for quick casting, or 4 2nd-level spells for double quick casting. Ethan had used spell sequence to unleash a barrage of spells in a short period, defeating the Duel Master Snape. As Fleur listened to Hermione's explanation, she fell into deep thought. The complexity and potential of Spell Matrix were clear. Mastery of it could significantly enhance one's combat effectiveness. However, the learning curve was steep. As Hermione attempted to elucidate the principles, Fleur realized she was struggling to grasp them. It dawned on her that the difference between her and Hermione wasn't merely tactical or a matter of spell repertoire, but lay in the deeper understanding and application of magic. Fleur's only advantage seemed to be her age, but it was apparent that age did not confer a decisive edge. On the contrary, Hermione's skill and reaction speed had far exceeded Fleur's expectations. Throughout the duel, it seemed as if Hermione had anticipated every move Fleur made, her spells and tactics vastly outmatching her own. In essence, Hermione had completely surpassed Fleur in abilities during the duel. No wonder Ethan held Hermione in such high regard. Fleur wondered if it was Ethan's training that had honed Hermione's skills to such a level. The duel left Fleur with not only a newfound respect for Hermione, but also a heightened interest in Ethan. Meanwhile, Hermione, basking in her victory, smiled and waved at Ethan, her expression brimming with pride as if to say, "Look, I'm better than her, right?" Ethan could only respond with a smile. In his heart, he acknowledged the slight rivalry between Hermione and Fleur. He believed a bit of competition was healthy, It signified that they both harbored feelings for him, as love is inherently selfish. If they were as close as family, it would mean the passion had faded, leaving only familial affection. At that moment, Ludo Bagman's voice filled the air, signaling the end of the Triwizard Tournament's third match and all the dual round-robin matches. "Now, for the exciting moment, let's announce the scores," Bagman declared, starting with the lowest scores and working his way up. Mr. Polyakov and Miss Dumont both had 1 win, 4 losses, and 2 points, Bagman announced, the audience applauding respectfully. Despite witnessing the entire game, the audience felt they would not have fared any better. Mr. Crumb's record is 1 win, 3 losses, and 1 draw, with 3 points, Bagman continued, acknowledging Crumb's efforts. Mr. Porter had an amazing performance, showing maturity beyond his years in this match, with 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw, totaling 5 points. Bagman proudly announced Harry Potter's score, particularly pleased with Potter's exceptional performance in the third game. As Bagman prepared to announce the scores for Hermione Granger and Fleur Delacour, he paused, surveying the silent audience, the anticipation palpable like the calm before a storm. The 2 witches maintained their dominance in the first 2 games, their magical prowess leaving many adult wizards in awe. Bagman's voice was brimming with enthusiasm, and his commendation was unparalleled. Just like in the first 2 games, no other player can match them. Their only real competition is each other, he exclaimed. They have just given us a spectacular match. I dare say the level of dueling they've shown could easily vie for the top spots, even at the International Duel Championship. Bagman's praise was far from being mere flattery. The wizarding masters present, all 5.2 of them, nodded in agreement. Any of the spells they use today have never been seen before at the International Duel Championship. Bagman continued, highlighting the uniqueness of their duel. However, the nature of competition is always fierce. Miss Fleur Delacour has once again narrowly lost to Miss Hermione Granger, with scores of 8 and 10 points respectively. Bagman's announcement acted as a catalyst, igniting the crowd's excitement. The cheers and applause from the wizards merged into a colossal wave of sound, soaring skyward. The deep-seated admiration and respect for the strong, ingrained in people's very genes since ancient times, were palpable in the air. In the midst of the jubilant atmosphere, Bagman went on to announce, the 4th and final game will take place on the evening of June 24th. The Warriors will be informed about the details of the game a month in advance. Thank you all for your unwavering support and enthusiasm for the Warriors. The scene shifted to Hermione, marking the update. New month, new opportunities. Please consider placing custom orders, sending flowers, monthly tickets, comments, and rewards. If you have a ticket, it would mean the world to me, the author interjected, emphasizing the importance of the reader's support. Chapter 409. As the game concluded, the spectators began to disperse in an orderly fashion, guided by the staff. Amidst the fading noise, Professor Dumbledore appeared quietly behind Snape, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Snape turned, his frown easing slightly upon seeing Dumbledore, yet a trace of helplessness lingered. "Headmaster, what do you need?" he asked. "Severus, we need to talk," Dumbledore said, his voice serious and tinged with urgency. Snape nodded, his expression turning solemn, and followed Dumbledore to the principal's office. Inside, the room was bathed in warm yellow light, with 2 cups of steaming hot tea on the table. Dumbledore waved his wand, and one of the cups floated gently in front of Snape. "Severus, what are your thoughts on Ethan Green?" he inquired. Snape took a moment, carefully choosing his words. "He's a talented young wizard, with clear strengths and weaknesses. His animagus form and the 4 animals of the Chimera symbolize his nature. Brave yet proud, intelligent yet detached, kind yet stubborn, cunning yet selfish," he continued, a hint of disdain in his voice. "Moreover, he might just be the most flirtatious wizard in history, entangled with numerous young witches." Dumbledore adjusted his glasses, his eyes reflecting deep concern. "Severus, you know what concerns me," he said, not waiting for a response. "His actions in this game, the magic he's created, while not inherently dark, is as alarming as dark magic in its effects, the reckless manipulation of others' spirits." He paused, recalling a recent event, and the curse he placed on that offender last month, the man in Azkaban, forever young. These spells, though not outright cruel, are dangerous, especially since he's teaching them to others. Dumbledore's tone grew heavier with worry. What's more troubling is how he eliminated Li Huo on the first day of the game. Only 2 other wizards have used such a method, he said, alluding to 2 infamous names. Headmaster, you're overthinking it, Snape interjected, his voice laced with disdain. Ethan and the Dark Lord are worlds apart. The Dark Lord only loved himself, but Ethan, he loves many, and many love him in return. Snape's expression turned sarcastic. Tom was also adored at Hogwarts, but Ethan, despite his flaws, is different. Dumbledore sipped his tea thoughtfully. You're right, Severus. There's a fundamental difference. Ethan, a Muggle-born, has aligned himself with Jaina Proudmoore's radical faction within the Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore's frown deepened. Through Ethan's influence, Jaina Proudmoore recruited top Hogwarts graduates last summer. These young people, drawn to Ethan's charisma, are now echoing the radical views of Jaina's faction. He looked at Snape intently. Severus, the parallels between Ethan and Tom are there, but so are the similarities with young Gellert. Their talent, their independence, their fascination with dark magic and forbidden knowledge. It's concerning. Dumbledore's voice trailed off, leaving a heavy silence in the room as both men contemplated the implications of Ethan Green's actions and affiliations. The voice gradually softened, and a look of reminiscence appeared on his face. Snape suddenly raised his head, his sharp eyes searching Dumbledore's expression, and blurted out, "With all due respect, Dumbledore, isn't this kind of character exactly what you admire?" Realizing his mistake, Snape coughed slightly, attempting to mask his embarrassment. Dumbledore, as far as I know, young Grindelwald doesn't compare to Ethan. Ethan devotes all his energy to creating new kinds of magic. While Grindelwald may study forbidden magic, he lacks the interest in innovation. In contrast, Ethan Green has created hundreds of fascinating spells. Snape waved his wand, and a ball of light emerged, fluttering around the headmaster's office like a wayward firefly. This is Ethan's dancing lights, the most widely spread among his arcane magics. Many young wizards have learned this useful little spell through various annals, even if they haven't joined the erudite society. Dumbledore responded firmly. I believe he, like Garrett, is conducting various experiments in secret. Otherwise, he couldn't have mastered so many spells that aren't taught in school at his age. Snape added, people like Ethan Green are driven by strong desires, mingling among witches and indulging in their pleasures. Thus, his character is more pragmatic. He can't be like Grindelwald, who pursued his ideals without any reservations, even though they both had the capability to achieve their dreams. This is what concerns me more, Dumbledore said, his face etched with sorrow. Gellert was more passionate in his youth, sometimes even indulging in pranks like the Weasley twins. Like Ethan, his egotistical nature makes them both inclined to offer a fair fight to their opponents. Snape interjected, but there are fundamental differences between them. Yes, you see it clearly. They are indeed different, Dumbledore agreed. He then closed his eyes, lost in thought. Gellert was a pure idealist. He successfully impersonated Percival Graves, but ultimately he couldn't stand the obscurity that poor Credence Barebone had become and was killed by an American Auror. He couldn't resist revealing his ideals, thus exposing himself. Dumbledore opened his eyes, his gaze deep and thoughtful. But Ethan is different. When he realizes that a direct confrontation won't ensure his victory, he won't hesitate to employ methods beyond the conventional rules. As Dumbledore continued, his frown deepened. There's another point, the most crucial one, he said gravely. Sir Nicholas, the fat friar, and the school portraits all informed me they found a mark resembling that of the Death Eaters on those girls. Surprisingly, Ethan seems to have convinced Miss Grey to keep this from me, and she refused to disclose any information about them. You must understand, Severus, that Gellert never completely lost his trust in me until after the tragedy we caused because of Aberforth. Dumbledore fell silent, his expression laden with sadness. He paused, seemingly organizing his thoughts. Gellert only began to form an army after acquiring the Elder Wand, whereas Ethan, there are young wizards in the school with marks similar to those of the Death Eaters, and most of the Aurors in the Ministry of Magic are under the influence of the Jaina faction. The society has almost become the reserve army for Jaina's faction. This speaks volumes. Dumbledore's voice was low and resonant, each word seeming to come from deep within his soul. Snape listened, growing increasingly astonished. He had never imagined Ethan Green had been acting so covertly. His perception of Ethan began to shift dramatically. But for some reason, he admired Ethan more than Dumbledore, decisive, efficient, yet with a moral compass. Green and Garrett's approaches are no longer aligned, Dumbledore continued. They indeed operate within the bounds of the law, but they are more inclined to manipulate and amend the law to suit their own ends. Dumbledore paused, casting a look at Snape that carried a hint of entreaty. Severus, I founded the Order of the Phoenix myself. I have no desire, nor any justification, to act against Ethan and Jaina's faction. My only wish is for you to lend an old man your ears, perhaps starting with those close to him, to monitor his movements and intentions. We must ensure the prophecy is fulfilled. For the first time, Snape saw the greatest wizard of the age, the vanquisher of two Dark Lords, weighed down by the resurgence of Voldemort and the ascent of Ethan Green. Behind those spectacles, eyes that had always sparkled with wisdom now appeared aged and weary. Of course, I will heed your request, Snape affirmed with conviction. But, he leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. Dumbledore, if Ethan and Jaina were to truly cross the line, how would you react? Snape's question resonated in the headmaster's office. He fixed Dumbledore with a penetrating gaze, awaiting his response. You treated Tom Riddle similarly in the beginning. What was the outcome? What actions did you take? You vowed to protect Lily, but what ultimately transpired? Did you merely teach her an ancient magic that necessitates self-sacrifice to cast, the Guardian of Love? And then, did you borrow their invisibility cloaks before tragedy struck? After Snape's words, a profound silence enveloped the headmaster's office. The atmosphere turned dense, punctuated only by the tense and labored breathing of the two men. Chapter 410. The third game of the Triwizard Tournament finally concluded, yet the ripples it created were far from settling. Among the 6 competitors, Hermione and Fleur stood out as the strongest warriors, captivating the European audience with their remarkable prowess and breathtaking beauty. Their victory held profound significance for those wizards advocating for equality. Hermione Granger, a Muggle-born, and Fleur Delacour, a Vila half-blood, were both from lineages scorned by purebloods. However, their joint triumph shattered the purebloods' cherished blood purity doctrine. Through their accomplishments, they demonstrated to the world that bloodline is not the sole determinant of one's capabilities. In the latest issue of The Quibbler, an article eloquently celebrated the victories of Hermione and Fleur over Krum, Polyakov, and Dumont as a triumph of equality over blood purity. Traditionally, The Quibbler was known for its eccentric urban legends, explorations of mythical creatures, and various anti-establishment conspiracy theories, often dismissed by purists. Yet, this article marked a turning point, igniting a widespread discussion on equality and blood status within the wizarding community. From fringe tabloid to mainstream discourse, numerous media outlets began to denounce pure-bloodism as archaic, highlighting the defeat of pure-blood wizards by a new generation of young, more diverse competitors. Even Harry Potter, who secured 3rd place, is of mixed heritage, further underscoring the call for equality. The surge in public opinion propelled Hermione and Fleur to iconic status, serving as inspirations for the younger generation of wizards to champion equality and freedom. Their achievements were celebrated and referenced extensively, sparking a movement towards greater inclusivity. However, amidst this public fervor, The Quibbler and its promoters, having sparked the debate, discreetly withdrew, content with the attention and profits garnered, choosing to remain in the shadows. In contrast to the heated discussions on pure-bloodism and equality, other topics garnered less attention. The tournament itself was praised for its innovative live broadcast system, which showcased technologies like the secret eye camera and the illusion playback system, leaving audiences in awe. The promotional efforts for products like Corn, Chrysanthemum, Flying Broomsticks, Kribic Wizard Color Pack Firecrackers, and Chuibao Super Bubblegum during the broadcast significantly boosted sales. Bagman's initiative to promote the live broadcast system initially hindered by its high cost, finally paid off with several Quidditch clubs placing orders, much to his delight. In light of these developments, Ethan began planning to establish an alchemy company during the summer vacation. Additionally, the strategy of featuring celebrity performances during halftime added an extra layer of entertainment and discussion to the games, further enhancing the tournament's appeal. The organization and execution of the game were commendable, and the additional services provided for spectators, including accommodations and shopping experiences in Hogsmeade, received high praise. The merchants of Hogsmeade, having profited significantly from the event, extended their gratitude to the Ministry of Magic through numerous thank you letters. Their preparation for the influx of tourists, including the availability of ample accommodations and customized game souvenirs, was made possible by the ministry's proactive engagement. Following the turmoil of the World Cup, the Department of Magical Sports and International Cooperation could finally take pride in their achievements. In this scenario, old Barty Crouch was notably absent, leaving the real organizational efforts to Ludo Bagman. Despite facing criticism, Bagman's effective coordination and management earned him recognition and a more influential position within the department. However, Bagman was aware that many of the innovative ideas, such as the live broadcast of advertisements, celebrity, tie performances, and early collaboration with Hogsmeade merchants, were not his own, but were suggested by Ethan Green. His success marked another advancement of Jaina's influence within the Ministry of Magic. Another topic that captivated public interest was the love triangle gossip involving Harry, Ron, and Krum. The media, without needing any prompting from Rita Skeeter, highlighted several key moments of the Triwizard Tournament that underscored the emotional dynamics among the trio. Harry dedicating his victory in the first task to Ron Weasley was a moment of genuine affection that resonated with audiences. The duel between Harry Potter and Victor Krum over Ron was particularly thrilling, ending in a draw that left much to the imagination regarding their romantic entanglement. As these stories were shared and embellished, the narrative became increasingly compelling. Ron emerged as the focal point of this emotional saga, perceived as both a captivating and controversial figure. After the conclusion of the Triwizard Tournament, Hogwarts settled back into its routine, and time marched on towards Easter. In a gesture of nostalgia for Easter in Azeroth, Jaina prepared a special surprise for Ethan, a collection of Easter eggs, each as large as a dragon egg, beautifully painted with scenes from Azeroth. The eggs contained an assortment of candies from Honeydukes, each more dazzling and delicious than the last. Mrs. Molly Weasley also sent Ethan Easter eggs filled with her homemade toffees. While not as exquisite as Honeydukes candies, they offered a unique charm. Meanwhile, on the Durmstrang ship, Krum received an Easter gift from Mrs. Weasley as well. Surprised by the tiny size of the Easter eggs, Krum wondered how she managed to find such small eggs. After some contemplation, he concluded that she must have been influenced by rumors in Wizard Weekly. Frustrated, Krum crushed the Easter egg in a moment of impatience. Indeed, as Krum mentioned, Mrs. Molly Weasley had been closely monitoring the rumors surrounding her youngest son, Ron, along with Harry and Krum, since the World Cup. Initially, she dismissed these rumors as baseless. However, as time passed and more evidence surfaced, including so-called verified reports and misleading photographs, she began to question her stance, contemplating the possibility of accepting her son's potential partner. In Mrs. Weasley's view, Harry was a more suitable choice than Krum for Ron. Harry hailed from the United Kingdom, meaning Ron wouldn't have to move far away. Moreover, Harry had grown up under their watchful eyes, proving his character to be trustworthy. Consequently, Harry received an Easter egg from Mrs. Weasley, which was as large as an ostrich egg. Unaware of Mrs. Weasley's underlying intentions, Harry was delighted with the gift. Meanwhile, Ron's older brothers, the Weasley twins, with Ethan's assistance, launched a unique Easter product. They created a magical bunny egg that, when consumed, would cause the eater to sprout a pair of fluffy bunny ears in completely random colors. This novelty was a hit among the young wizards, and the twins, with Ethan's help, managed to profit handsomely once again, following their successful bet on the third game. Chapter 411. On the first day back from the Easter holiday, Ravenclaw and Gryffindor students made their way to the Charms classroom together. They were scheduled to practice the Bulliance Curse, a spell designed to counteract the effects of the Flying Curse. Aware of the potential hazards of objects flying uncontrollably around the room, Professor Flitwick had thoughtfully provided each student with a large pile of soft pads. These were meant to cushion any misdirected spells, preventing injury. Despite the precaution, the class didn't proceed as smoothly as hoped. Neville's spellcasting was particularly off-mark, resulting in objects, and even Professor Flitwick himself, being sent flying across the room. Ethan stepped in to help, assisting Professor Flitwick in correcting the student's pronunciation. Hermione also became an impromptu assistant. Her recent triumphs in the Triwizard Tournament had elevated her status. No longer was she seen merely as a studious girl. Many students were now eager to seek her guidance. Professor Flitwick was delighted with the contributions of his 2-star pupils. He announced that any student who could master the expelling curse by the end of the class would be exempt from the essay assignment he had planned. Although mastering the expelling curse was challenging, by the end of the class, most members of the Erudite Society, aside from Ethan and Hermione, had earned the exemption through their diligent practice of similar spells. As the bell signaled the end of the class, Ethan and Hermione were about to leave together when Professor Flitwick called out to them. "Sorry, Miss Granger. I know you two are a lovely couple and wish to spend every moment together, but I need to borrow Mr. Green for a while," he said, winking at Hermione, who blushed in response. Then, turning to Ethan, Professor Flitwick spoke with gravity. "Ethan, follow me. The headmaster and Mr. Bagman are waiting for you in the principal's office. You have an important task to complete today." Upon entering the headmaster's office, they found it bustling with activity. The principal, Ludo Bagman, and Professors Sprout, Snape, and Moody were all present, gathered around Dumbledore's desk. The usual magical artifacts had been cleared to make room for a large, intricately designed maze model, evidently crafted by Professor McGonagall. "Ah, Mr. Green, you've arrived," Ludo Bagman exclaimed, greeting Ethan warmly. "We're discussing the design for the 4th task of the Triwizard Tournament, the maze. Your insights are crucial to us." Ethan examined the model and inquired about the location of the maze. "On the Quidditch pitch, of course." Bagman replied without hesitation. Ethan internally lamented the frequent repurposing of the Quidditch field. Bagman outlined the rules, explaining that the trophy would be placed at the maze's center. Competitors would enter based on their current standings, with the first to retrieve the trophy being declared the champion. Ethan observed Professor Moody's reaction, noting the old man's palpable excitement and anticipation. Bagman, pointing to the model, expressed concerns about its simplicity. Ethan agreed, suggesting, "Indeed, this maze's design is overly simplistic and the path too direct. Unless the intention is for the champions to confront each other throughout their quest for the trophy, it would be wise to introduce multiple routes." Ethan glanced at Snape lightly and said, "It's not a matter of opinion. It's just that the perspectives of Muggles and wizards are different. I heard that the professor also lived in the Muggle world when he was a student. He should understand the difference between Muggles and wizards. At least, if it was a Muggle-designed maze, it should look like this." As he spoke, Ethan pulled out his wand, ignoring Snape's murderous gaze, and lightly tapped on the maze model. In the blink of an eye, the model changed drastically, revealing a more intricate maze in front of everyone's eyes. "This is the maze of the Muggle world," Ethan introduced to everyone. Dumbledore couldn't help but sigh. "It is indeed very complicated. I dare say that if there is no guiding magic in it, it may take a few days to find a way out. However, the school's Quidditch pitch may not be able to accommodate such a large maze. Moreover, with this level of complexity, even without adding additional traps, few warriors can reach the finish line on time." It was clear that he didn't know much about the Muggle world. Except for wizards born in the Muggle world, most wizards know little about Muggles, despite the existence of Muggle studies courses. Ethan still remembers Ginny mentioning Arthur Weasley, a man who would ask endless questions about Muggle-related things every time he met Ethan or Harry. In fact, Ethan was the wizard who understood Muggles best. In contrast, Kerdi Babaji, who teaches Muggle studies, couldn't even distinguish between an engine and a generator, far from Arthur Weasley's expertise in Muggle machine modification. "Mr. Green, don't show off your knowledge here," Moody snorted impatiently, his breath tinged with obvious displeasure. "We all know that no one here knows the Muggle world better than you, so please, speak your mind directly. We don't have time to beat around the bush." Ethan nodded slightly and said in a calm tone, "Since you think the previous idea is too complicated, let's make some adjustments." He raised his wand and lightly tapped on the maze model. The maze instantly underwent significant changes. The originally intricate passages were greatly simplified, with only 3 paths leading to the center of the maze, and the remaining redundant forks were cleverly erased. This way, although the maze still retained its intricate characteristics, the overall structure became clearer and more accessible. "I deliberately reserved some forks that lead to the end." Ethan tapped the model with his wand, and several light spots were marked on the forks and aisles. "These aisles and forks greatly reduce the difficulty of finding the end, but I left them out on purpose. They are ideal if you want to set traps." Dumbledore's eyes lit up, and he clapped his hands. "This design is really great. This maze is obviously more interesting and challenging than our previous ideas. Fortunately, you joined the preparatory team for the Tri-Wizard tournament. The suggestions you provided really made the Tri-Wizard tournament a great addition." He glanced at Ethan with emotion, his eyes filled with complexity. Regardless of what he did, this boy's talent was indeed undeniable. Ludo rubbed his temples with some worry. "The problem is, the area of the Quidditch stadium is not enough." Ethan tapped the table and said in a deep voice, "We can use the invisible extension spell." "This is a good idea, but the maze is so large that we need more people." Professor McGonagall reminded, "It won't be enough to cast the invisible extension spell on the entire maze, even if there are several of us combined." Ludo also showed concern. "The Ministry of Magic does not have enough manpower to assist us. Ordinary staff may be able to gray." Ethan pondered for a moment, his eyes lighting up with a spark of inspiration. "Actually, I have a suggestion. We could reach out to Tonks and ask for assistance from the Aurors." "Construct a maze and seek help from Aurors," Snape said, his tone laced with incredulity. "I wasn't aware that today's Auror training included learning the invisible extension charm." Ethan gave Snape a brief glance, choosing not to engage with his sarcasm. "No, they haven't learned the invisible extension charm, but they are proficient in a spell-casting technique known as Circle Magic Circle. This technique requires the collaboration of 3 individuals, with 1 leading the spellcasting and 2 providing assistance. By pooling their magical power, they can achieve effects far beyond what one might expect, and the assistants don't need to be experts in the spell being cast." He continued, outlining his proposal. "We could have the Aurors use the Circle Magic Circle to help cast the invisible extension spell. I'm confident they would be willing to assist, provided we're prepared to compensate them for their time." Oh, I've seen this before," exclaimed Ludo, suddenly catching on. "During the World Cup night, I saw many Aurors working together in groups of 3 to cast spells. That was the Circle Magic Circle, right?" "That's correct," Ethan confirmed with a nod. "The new Auror training program incorporates concepts from Muggle military strategies, emphasizing teamwork and coordinated operations. As a result, they've had to master certain cooperative skills to leverage everyone's strengths effectively." Upon hearing Ethan's explanation, the professors began to envision the transformed Auror force. This new approach meant that individual skill training for Aurors would be somewhat de-emphasized, as not everyone needed to be a jack of all trades. Instead, each Auror would specialize in a particular area. While this might reduce their effectiveness when operating solo compared to the older generation of Aurors, their collective power when working as a team would be formidable. After all, it's challenging for a generalist to outperform a specialist in their area of expertise, especially when that specialist is backed by 2 teammates. With the enhancement provided by the Circle spell, their combined strength would exceed that of 3 individual experts. This shift in training methodology could also lower the barriers to entry for becoming an Auror. Traditionally, a Hogwarts graduate aspiring to join the Aurors needed to secure 5 NET certificates, achieving excellent or good grades in key subjects like potions, defense against the dark arts, transfiguration, and charms. However, the new criteria might not be as stringent, possibly reducing the number of required NEWTs or focusing on excellence in a specific subject. This change would likely lead to a significant increase in the number of Aurors without compromising on quality. On the contrary, as the ranks of Aurors swelled, their collective combat effectiveness would grow exponentially, posing a formidable challenge to dark wizards. Reflecting on this, Professor Flitwick suddenly asked, "Ethan, given your extensive knowledge of the Circle Magic Circle, I presume this innovation was your idea?" "Yes, Professor Flitwick," Ethan admitted openly. "I'm so proud of you, Ethan," Professor Flitwick praised warmly. "This magic has the potential to change the world." Chapter 412. After understanding the mystery of the ring array, everyone finally grasped Ethan's plan and how he intended to address the current manpower shortage. Indeed, if the circular array could be utilized adeptly, the efficiency of wizards already proficient in the invisible extension spell could be tripled. This approach would easily mitigate the manpower issue. Ludo immediately concurred. "The remuneration of Aurors is not a concern. Thanks to you, the sponsorship fees from Hogsmeade merchants are quite substantial. We can afford to offer them a generous amount of overtime pay." After finalizing the maze framework, the next step was designing traps and levels. Ethan proposed a series of complex traps and level designs almost effortlessly. Placed in a maze, these would undoubtedly present every participant with unprecedented challenges and surprises. These traps were actually inspired by defense strategies from the woods surrounding my home. "I can provide more designs if needed," Ethan added. "Enough." Professor McGonagall couldn't help but interrupt Ethan. "If you set up the traps your way, I fear no participant will make it through. They'd be trapped or worse before even reaching the end. This game doesn't need such complexity." Professor McGonagall's frustration was understandable, given that many of the traps Ethan designed were beyond even her imagination. They were incredibly difficult to solve, posing an even greater challenge for the students. "Really? But I believe Hermione could manage," Ethan confidently mentioned his girlfriend as an example. "At least she has the ability to navigate the defenses around my home." "Of course, this assumes there are no forests managed by dryads," Snape interjected with a slight malicious smile. "Mr. Green seems intent on letting other participants fall into his traps, doesn't he? This way, his girlfriend could easily claim the championship." "You don't seem qualified to speak on this, Professor," Ethan retorted. "As far as I know, the hallucinogens you mentioned are no laughing matter. Any participant unlucky enough to encounter them could be severely affected." "Let's not overcomplicate things," Dumbledore intervened, waving his fingers gently in the air as if organizing his thoughts. "The boggart and red cap suggested by Alastor are quite interesting. Pomona's upside-down grass and devil's snare, combined with Snape's hallucinogens and sleeping powder, could yield unexpected results. However, we must use hallucinogens cautiously. Severus, lower the dosage to ensure participants can recover on their own after exiting the trap," Dumbledore continued. "Hagrid's involvement with his blast-ended Scroots and Mr. Green's animated garden shrub will undoubtedly be excellent choices for guarding key junctions. And the Sphinx, that mysterious creature, will guard the final hurdle before the trophy. Only the cleverest can pass its test." To Ethan, these traps seemed overly simplistic. He couldn't help but ask, "Are you aiming to hand the championship to Hermione? With her capabilities, I doubt any of these levels will pose a threat." Dumbledore paused before conceding. "All right, you may add some more challenging levels, but we must ensure that among the various paths to the end, at least one is surmountable by the participants. Remember, the goal of this final is to test the participants, not to defeat them. Don't lose sight of what this game is truly about." Ethan keenly understood the underlying message. The real concern was Voldemort, making the maze's difficulty seem inconsequential in comparison. Ethan shrugged slightly, acquiescing to Dumbledore's proposal. With a light flick of his wand, he tapped the top of the maze model. Instantly, Models of traps and levels filled the intricate forks and corridors like flowing water. Ethan didn't stop there. He ingeniously arranged several walls that were constantly moving and used for teleportation. Mushroom circles will become hidden paths for the warriors during their exploration, he explained. In this wall, even if a warrior is blocked at certain levels, they can still move one step closer to the finish line through luck. Ethan then offered a creative suggestion. We could use high-density hedges of garden shrubs to form the walls inside the maze. This would greatly reduce the solidity of the walls. When warriors encounter difficult levels, they can find new breakthroughs by destroying the wall. At the same time, we can cleverly arrange traps in the walls to increase the maze's challenge. Great! Dumbledore clapped his hands and laughed, full of praise for Ethan's idea. I think you have understood the true meaning of the final level. With the design blueprint finalized, the next step was the intensive construction work. The staff of the Ministry of Magic and Aurors would assist with the use of the invisible extension spell. However, the specific construction of the maze required various tasks to be claimed by individuals. The construction of the maze would be started by Hagrid. Although the half-blood giant was not present, Dumbledore claimed the task on his behalf, stating that Hagrid would be responsible for building brick walls around the maze. Ethan volunteered for the next phase and planned to invite the centaur Drew, Miss Dicey, and several professionals to jointly handle the construction of the high-density gardening shrubs that would compose the walls inside the maze. Their cooperation would ensure the walls inside the maze were both beautiful and practical. After that, it was time to set up traps to test the warriors' abilities. The responsibility for each trap's design and implementation would fall to the person whose design was adopted, with all the professors at Hogwarts contributing. Finally, there's the issue of the warriors' safety, Dumbledore said, looking at Ethan with a serious expression. I plan to add 4 more people and enter the labyrinth with 2 people from the Ministry of Magic. Their duty is to protect the warriors and prevent dark wizards hiding in the shadows from attacking them. Dumbledore continued, Ethan, I'm aware of your relationship with Miss Granger and Miss Delacour, but I hope you can personally ensure Potter's safety. Are you up for it? Without waiting for his response, Dumbledore added, the safety of Miss Granger and Miss Delacour will be entrusted to the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic. I believe you'll be satisfied with this arrangement. Certainly, Ethan agreed with a slight shrug. He had already considered letting Sorella and Tonks take charge of their safety when the time came. Next, Severus, Polyakov's safety will be your responsibility. Dumbledore turned to Snape, who pursed his lips tightly but finally nodded in agreement. Filius, Miss Dumont's safety is in your hands. Don't worry, leave it to me, Professor Flitwick vowed. And what about Mr. Crumb? Dumbledore turned to Alastor. I'll take charge of him, Alastor nodded, adding, we all must remain vigilant at all times to protect our respective warriors. Dumbledore concluded, each of you must go all out to protect your warriors. Once the warriors use fireworks to call for help, it means they choose to abandon the game. Of course, if the lives of warriors are under threat, and it is your prerogative to make the most suitable decisions to safeguard their lives above all else. Please consider supporting me with custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have votes to spare, I would greatly appreciate it if you could direct them my way. Your support is incredibly important to me. Thank you once again. Chapter 413. At the start of the summer semester, Ethan and the other Quidditch players usually intensified their training in anticipation of the season's final match. This year, Ethan's responsibilities on the Quidditch pitch were different. He was involved in constructing the venue for the Triwizard Tournament finals. Shortly after the planning session, a brick wall was erected on the pitch, sparking widespread speculation among the young wizards. Many initially thought Hagrid was behind the construction for the final event, but this theory was soon dismissed. The purpose of the bricks and the eventual form they would take became a subject of keen interest. As days turned into weeks, the brick structure grew taller, hinting at a massive building complex in the making. With the structure taking shape, Ethan could commence his work. However, he soon noticed a peculiar change in Jiangchu's behavior. Although they were not inseparable, Jiangchu used to seek out Ethan's company whenever possible. Now, their interactions were limited to brief encounters at breakfast and dinner. During their scarce moments together, Jiangchu seemed to mask her emotions, maintaining a facade of calm. Ethan observed subtle shifts in her preferences, such as her newfound taste for strong tea and coffee over her usual sweet beverages like iced pumpkin juice and strawberry sherbet. Moreover, Jiangchu's attentiveness towards Ethan had waned. She no longer prepared meals tailored to his liking, a gesture of care he had grown accustomed to. Ethan was self-sufficient, yet he couldn't help but be intrigued by these changes. Adding to his confusion was the noticeable absence of their intimate encounters, which had become a regular part of their relationship. Despite his busy schedule with the maze construction, Ethan found it odd that Jiangchu hadn't sought him out, a departure from their usual pattern. Ethan didn't doubt her feelings for him. Their rare meetings still radiated with mutual affection. He was convinced there had to be a significant reason for her recent behavior. His first thought was that Jiangchu was preoccupied with preparing for the OWL exams, a critical milestone for Hogwarts students that could influence their future academic and career paths. Given that Jiangchu was a year ahead of Ethan and facing this challenge, it seemed a plausible explanation. However, Ethan felt this didn't fully account for her mysterious demeanor. Jiangchu was a top student, and her academic performance had only soared after consuming an elixir of intelligence. She consistently achieved high scores in her classes, making the exam preparation a less convincing reason for her recent distance. Ethan pondered other possibilities, determined to understand the root of Jiangchu's changed behavior. He knew that whatever the cause, it had to be significant, and he was resolved to support her through it, reaffirming the depth of their connection. Each of the 9 subjects she had studied for the WL exams seemed to pose little pressure on her. So, what was it that made Jiangchu so unusual? Ethan was filled with doubts. He had considered asking Jiangchu directly, but he knew the girl's personality well. Jiangchu was gentle in appearance, but had a strong will. Otherwise, she wouldn't have pursued Ethan so tirelessly and proactively. Once she decided to keep something to herself, not even a 9-headed fire dragon could persuade her to reveal it, and Ethan knew he wouldn't get any information from her, no matter how much he asked. Ethan's psychic ability allowed him to detect other people's thoughts, but this detection was only superficial. Moreover, Jiangchu had practiced occlumency, making it impossible for him to rely on psychic detection to understand her thoughts. Furthermore, Ethan was reluctant to use this method on his lover, even if it was out of concern and worry. If Jiangchu were an enemy, he might have countless ways to make her reveal her secret, but she was Ethan's lover, and he was unwilling to explore the truth in any way that might to hurt her. After much thought, Ethan decided to use a seemingly clumsy but directly effective method: tracking. He planned to secretly observe Jiangchu's whereabouts to see what she was up to and then confront her. This way, Jiangchu would have no choice but to tell the truth. Of course, Ethan wouldn't actually stalk Jiangchu like a fool. As a wizard, he naturally used the power of magic. Shortly after dinner one day, he accurately timed and activated his magic to locate Jiangchu's coordinates half an hour after she left the auditorium. Guided by magic, Ethan quietly arrived at the library. In a secluded corner, he found Jiangchu deeply engrossed in a heavy magic book, with notes and key points densely recorded beside her. Approaching quietly, Ethan noticed Jiangchu's face was as pale as paper, and her once bright and lively apricot eyes were now shadowed with heavy bags. The girl's eyes revealed deep exhaustion and anxiety, a stark contrast to the Jiangchu he saw on a daily basis. Ethan approached her with concern and asked softly, "Jiangchu, have you been studying like this every day recently? You seem so tired and look like you're seriously lacking sleep." Startled by Ethan's voice, Jiangchu jumped up like a frightened deer. She instinctively reached for her cosmetics, attempting to conceal her worn-out appearance. However, Ethan gently grabbed her hand, shaking his head. "Don't hide it, Jiangchu. I've seen it all." At first, panic flashed in Jiangchu's eyes, but she soon managed to muster a smile. "Sorry, Ethan. I just didn't want you to worry." Ethan sighed deeply. Why did you hide this from me? You're my lover. We're in this together. What's going on? Is there something that requires you to study so hard? Jiangqiu was silent for a moment, seemingly wrestling with her thoughts. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft yet filled with an undeniable firmness and determination. This time, for the WL exam, I want to achieve 12 O's. Ethan was taken aback by her ambition. He frowned slightly and asked, why do you suddenly have such a strong goal? You've consistently achieved O grades in 9 courses. Isn't that enough? Jiangqiu gently shook her head, a flicker of dissatisfaction in her eyes. It's not enough. She mentioned that Hermione had planned to achieve O's in all 12 courses next year to earn the WL Certificate of Excellence. She even considered taking divination classes occasionally, following in the footsteps of Cyrilla and Penelo. Both achieved 12 O's that year. With outstanding certificates, I cannot fall behind them. Ethan instantly understood that this was the competitive spirit inspired by the achievements of Hermione and the 2 exceptional seniors. He embraced Jiangqiu, comforting her gently. Jiangqiu, you don't need to prove yourself in this way. You've already accomplished so much, and I'm incredibly proud of you. OWL certificates are not the sole measure of a person's worth. I won't let you think you're less for not having 3 more O's. The certificate won't define you. What on earth are you talking about? Ethan's words made Jiangqiu burst into laughter. Then, she smiled and rested her head on Ethan's broad chest, finding a moment of peace and comfort. I know, Ethan. I understand how you feel about me, she said, shaking her head firmly. But this is my choice. I want to prove that I'm not inferior to them in terms of grades. Ethan sighed deeply, realizing that Jiangqiu's determination was unshakable. What could he do? Naturally, he could only offer his unwavering support. Well, since you've made your decision, you have my full support. Tell me, what do you need from me? A glimmer of emotion appeared in Jiangqiu's eyes. Thank you, Ethan. My biggest challenge now is that there are 3 subjects I haven't taken classes in. I must rely on self-study to cover 2 years' worth of content in the remaining month. I need you to teach me these subjects. Ethan agreed without a moment's hesitation. Of course. Since you're aiming for 12 O's, as you are boyfriend, I'll do everything in my power to help you achieve this goal. I'll be your teacher and guide you through these courses. Chapter 414. In the days that followed, Ethan's life seemed to be divided into 2 distinct parts. Aside from his daily commitment to constructing the maze, he dedicated all his remaining free time to tutoring Jiangqiu. Under Ethan's guidance, a true genius in his own right, Jiangqiu's learning progress soared. She advanced rapidly, a stark contrast to her previous struggles where she would study tirelessly, often at the expense of sleep and meals. However, unlike academic prodigies such as Hermione and Penelo, Jiangqiu still needed to invest considerable time in repetitive learning and practice each day. This was especially true for one of the 3 subjects she was being tutored in, ancient runes. Recognized as one of the most challenging subjects for the OWL exams, the study of runic characters presented a formidable challenge. These characters were not only complex, but also prone to polysemy, where the same rune could have entirely different meanings depending on the context. Accurately interpreting and applying these characters and understanding their nuances posed a significant challenge for Jiangqiu. Had she chosen this course earlier and allocated sufficient time to gradually absorb and comprehend it, mastering ancient runes might not have been so daunting. However, attempting to learn it in less than 2 months was a Herculean task. Ethan, providing personalized one-on-one tutoring, was her best hope. As the main structure of the Quidditch Stadium's maze neared completion, it was time to focus on setting up the traps. One morning, after breakfast, Ethan intercepted Jiangqiu, who was on her way to the library. Jiangqiu, let's skip the library today and go somewhere else with me, he suggested, capturing her attention. Jiangqiu, puzzled, responded, Ethan, where are you taking me? I still have 22 runes to memorize today. We have unfinished learning tasks. Forget about the runes for now, Ethan replied, his eyes sparkling with excitement. I have a new idea that might significantly boost your learning efficiency. Really? Jiangqiu's curiosity was piqued. I'm intrigued. Have you concocted another intellectual potion? Ethan chuckled. Developing potions with permanent effects isn't that straightforward. The existing intelligence potions have already maximized their potential. A mere 5-point increase in intelligence attributes is monumental, equating to a 50-point surge in IQ. That's already incredibly potent. To surpass this, we need to explore unconventional methods. Unconventional methods? Jiangchu's interest deepened. What do you mean? Animagus, Ethan revealed succinctly. As they stepped outside into the bright sunshine, he noticed Jiangchu's confusion and elaborated. My enhanced animagus magic not only enables transformation into magical creatures, but also imparts special attributes and abilities based on the creature's type. With that, Ethan transformed into a chimera right before her eyes. He lay down and invited, "Climb aboard. We'll fly there directly and save time." "Okay," Jiangchu said, expertly mounting Ethan's broad back, a gesture they often shared in their playful moments. She took care not to disturb his wings and firmly grasped his mane. Once Jiangchu was securely positioned, Ethan rose to his feet and unfurled his massive wings. They ascended into the sky, soaring over the castle. Ethan's imposing figure drew the gaze of many young wizards below. "So, you plan to transform me into a creature known for its intelligence?" Jiangchu asked, nestled in Ethan's warm, soft mane, the cold wind caressing her cheeks. Ethan smiled mysteriously, but chose not to reveal too much. "You'll see when we get there," he said, flying towards Hagrid's hut. Several large sheds had been recently erected, with the smallest being as large as a small house, all tightly covered with canvas, obscuring the view of their contents. At this time, Hagrid was busy working as a construction worker on the Quidditch pitch and was not at home. Ethan landed directly in front of the largest Streck. Eden entered with a confident stride. Mounted on his back, Jiangchu was immediately confronted by a colossal creature standing opposite the chimera form Ethan had assumed. It was roughly the same size as Ethan, boasting a majestic lion's body, enormous paws, a long yellow tail adorned with a tuft of fluffy hair, and most strikingly, a pair of wings on its back. However, the creature's head was that of a woman. Jiangchu recognized it from the Monster Book of Monsters as a sphinx, specifically a female-faced sphinx, a creature typically found in the deserts of North Africa and the Middle East. It dawned on her that the animagus form Ethan had chosen for her was that of a sphinx, a creature known for its riddles and high intelligence. Despite her knowledge, Jiangchu was startled by the sight of the massive monster, but the female sphinx's reaction was even more pronounced. The exaggerated expression on her face revealed she was the one truly frightened. "Get out, monster!" the female-faced sphinx exclaimed in a sharp voice. "Don't come near me." Ethan quickly reverted to his human form and nodded apologetically to the sphinx. "I'm sorry, madam. It was my fault for scaring you. Are you not a chimera?" The sphinx's relief was evident upon seeing Ethan's transformation, but her curiosity was piqued. "You're actually a human. How did you manage that transformation?" Ethan briefly explained the concept of the magical animagus transformation, earning the sphinx's admiration. "So that's it. You wizards are indeed very capable." Jiangchu, puzzled by the sphinx's initial reaction, wondered if sphinxes were afraid of chimeras. She thought the sphinx should be a match for an ordinary chimera in terms of size and ability. Upon inquiring, the sphinx turned slightly embarrassed and hesitated before Ethan clarified, "There's no segregation between sphinxes and chimeras. To a wise sphinx, a chimera is merely a beast." Jiangchu blushed, understanding Ethan's implication. "But how is that possible? How is it not?" Ethan replied, glancing at the sphinx, who seemed concerned about politeness. Given their need for her cooperation, Ethan chose not to further offend her. Perhaps respecting Ethan's ability to transform, the sphinx did not display arrogance, but instead inquired, "Humans, you've sought me out specifically. What do you seek?" As a magical creature of high intelligence, the sphinx was accustomed to humans seeking favors, willing to grant them, as long as they could solve her riddles. Sphinxes, enjoying long lifespans in solitude, often found themselves bored, unlike humans. Sharing their wisdom and guarding ancient tombs were forms of entertainment for them, a testament to their willingness to interact with and assist humans. The sphinx in front of Ethan was likely there for the same reason. Strong competition acts as a checkpoint. In contrast, female sphinxes have a profound love for riddles, which are the primary source of Sphinx legends. Male-faced sphinxes prefer engaging in cool and noble philosophical discussions, while goat-faced sphinxes are either interested in current affairs or enjoy being flattered. The eagle-faced sphinx, on the other hand, is mostly silent, being the creature among sphinxes that is closest to a beast. It shows indifference to everything except threats from more powerful beings. Therefore, when facing this female sphinx, Ethan expressed his request openly. "I hope to obtain a vial of your blood. Do you intend to use my blood to enable humans to transform into sphinxes?" The female sphinx, showcasing her intelligence, immediately deduced Ethan's plan, just like when you transformed into a chimera. Ethan nodded, choosing not to conceal his intentions. For such an ancient magical creature, honesty and respect were crucial for establishing trust. "Yes," the female sphinx agreed, "but I have a condition." Zhang Chu noticed the light of expectation in the female sphinx's eyes. "If you successfully achieve this magic to transform someone into a sphinx, you must bring her to me." This condition was manageable for Ethan, and he agreed without any hesitation. "In that case, you may take the blood." The female sphinx extended her front paws generously, but then hesitated and retracted them. No. Although your ability to transform into a chimera has proven your wisdom, we must adhere to the rules. If you wish to obtain my blood, you must first solve a riddle." Ethan smiled slightly, having anticipated this traditional challenge. "Please, go ahead. I'm all ears." As a member of Ravenclaw, Ethan had a deep fascination and confidence in solving riddles. After all, with the eagle knocker at the dormitory entrance, he was accustomed to answering a riddle nearly every day. So the Sphinx posed her question. "What can bring people back to life, make you burst into tears and smile, bring you back to youth, and accompany you until you grow old? It is born in an instant, but can last a lifetime." "It's memories," Ethan replied without hesitation. "That's correct, smart young man," the Sphinx said with a kind smile, extending her front paws once again. Chapter 415. After obtaining the precious blood of the Sphinx, Ethan did not choose to return to the castle, but instead flew Zhang Chu to the Forbidden Forest. "Where is our next destination?" Zhang Chu asked curiously. Given that they had already secured the key ingredient of Sphinx's blood, logic dictated they should head back to the castle to commence the subsequent phase of their project. "A single bloodline of the Sphinx is not enough," Ethan said with a grin, startling a nearby hippogriff with the lion's mouth of his chimera form. "Without testing, I can't guarantee a perfect fusion with the Sphinx's blood. Hence, I plan to combine it with the blood of another magical creature. This way, even if the compatibility is low, it won't be too detrimental." Ethan had devised this method during his transformation into an alicorn. Mid-conversation, he adjusted his flight, folding his wings slightly, and dived towards the ground like an arrow. "This is the place." Soon, Zhang Chu realized Ethan had led her into the forest, circled around, and arrived at a cave. "Where are we?" Zhang Chu looked around, her curiosity piqued by their surroundings. "Hagrid's secret base," Ethan revealed, "is reserved for nurturing those creatures that aren't permitted." The cave, situated near a mountainside, was accessible via an extremely narrow and secretive path. Upon reaching the entrance, Ethan reverted to his human form. "Come on, let's go in." He took the lead, raising his wand, and a bright orb of light emerged, illuminating their path forward. The cave was cold and damp, filled with an unsettling atmosphere. The entrance sloped downwards, resembling a descent into the abyss. The further they went, the darker it became. Zhang Chu, feeling a growing tension, unconsciously grasped Ethan's wrist. They followed the long, narrow tunnel and soon reached its end, where a massive wooden door stood, slightly ajar, with a faint light seeping through. Ethan pushed the door open, and they entered a spacious cave filled with a strong, nauseating, fishy smell. Ethan quickly cast the fresh air charm, and a wave of clean air enveloped them, dispelling the stench. In the center of the cave, a creature as large as a lion stared at them. Its appearance was bizarre and terrifying, a grotesque amalgamation of nature's design. Its head bore both human and lion features, with large goat horns protruding from either side. The lion's mane framed its ferocious face, while its torso was covered in hard scales. A pair of massive bat wings extended from its back, casting shadows on the cave ceiling. Its tail, slender like a scorpion's, ended in a blue, poison-tipped stinger. The creature's mouth, filled with jagged teeth, seemed ready to tear apart any intruder. Jiangchu's heart raced at the sight, but she found some comfort in the fact that the beast was restrained by a thick iron chain, the other end secured to a stone pillar. Is this a manticore? She quickly identified the creature, having read about it in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Manticores were notorious magical creatures with a danger level of XXX, ranking alongside dragons, chimeras, and basilisks. In contrast, sphinxes were rated XX, not due to weakness but because of their gentler nature and lack of aggression. The danger level primarily reflected the threat posed to wizarding society. Manticores, like chimeras, had a particular taste for human flesh and emitted an eerie, drowsy hum while hunting. Their intelligence was not to be underestimated, capable of hope. Ethan observed the creature before him. Its ability to mimic human speech was fascinating, yet the sounds it produced were an odd blend of melodies, reminiscent of a flute and a trumpet. The creature's scorpion-like tail swayed continuously, with spikes that could launch in all directions, their venom splashing down like lethal raindrops. Moreover, its fur possessed a strong resistance to magic, rendering most spells ineffective against it, a fact that often left wizards at a loss. Upon witnessing this monster firsthand, Jiangchu experienced an epiphany. I finally understand how those blast-ended scroots came into being. You guessed it, Ethan replied, his tone less courteous than it had been with the Sphinx. It's the mother of those blast-ended scroots and another component your animagus transformation requires. Without hesitation, Ethan drew his wand and cast a spell on the ground. Dark, thick tentacles burst forth, binding the manticore despite its growls and roars, reminiscent of a scene Ethan had once witnessed involving Hermione. Seizing the opportunity, Ethan carefully extracted a vial of the manticore's precious blood. Wait, the blood of the manticore can actually be fused with that of the Sphinx? What's the principle behind this? Jiangchu asked, filled with curiosity as they left the cave. Ethan revisited their earlier discussion. Remember the reproductive isolation issue we mentioned with the Sphinx? You mean there's no reproductive isolation between manticores and sphinxes either? Jiangchu asked, incredulous. That's right, Ethan confirmed, addressing the seemingly absurd notion. If you think about it, they all share human faces, lion bodies, and wings. It's not surprising they have compatible blood. Just because they share similar traits, they can mix blood. That explanation seems overly simplistic, Jiangchu remarked, struggling to accept this rationale. It does sound ridiculous, but it's true, Ethan admitted with a shrug. The reason is quite straightforward. Many of these magical creatures didn't evolve naturally but were instead created. Some were transformed by wizards, others by gods, and some are the result of curses. Essentially, these creatures are amalgamations of beings already existing in nature. After their creation, they began to multiply, forming new species. Transforming back into the form of a chimera, Ethan allowed Jiangchu to mount his back, continuing his explanation as they flew. There are many examples of this. Take Hagrid's crossbreeding of manticores and firecrabs to create blast-ended scroots. The gap between manticores and firecrabs is arguably wider than that between manticores and sphinxes. He then delved into the topic of the sphinx. In fact, many demi-sphinx creatures can hybridize. Sphinxes, manticores, chimeras, and even griffins can produce hybrid offspring. The only difference between an eagle-faced sphinx and a griffin is a pair of eagle claws. But why didn't you mention this earlier? Jiangchu inquired. Ethan smirked. Female-faced sphinxes are quite proud. They look down on sheep-faced and eagle-faced sphinxes, let alone other creatures. In their eyes, only male-faced sphinxes are considered true kin. Revealing the truth prematurely would have likely resulted in our immediate expulsion. As Ethan shared these secrets, Jiangchu nodded eagerly, absorbing the wealth of unusual knowledge. As night descended, Ethan and Jiangchu returned to the tower. Previously, Ethan had announced plans for everyone's animagus transformation. Jiangchu and the others had completed the initial rituals, preparing the pupae of the Grimace hawk moth, a crystal bottle containing their own hair, and a mixture of saliva with a teaspoon of dew potion. These potions were essential components for their transformation, marking the beginning of their journey into the unknown. Having already absorbed the essence of the moon, the potion turned red. Ethan skillfully prepared the transformation potions using the blood of the Sphinx and Manticore. Hermione's animagus transformation was also underway. With Juyu leading, Jiangchu felt less afraid this time. She took Ethan's potion beneath the oak tree and drank it in one gulp. Soon, a creature that bore the characteristics of both a Sphinx and a Manticore appeared before Ethan. However, unlike the Manticore seen in the cave, Jiangchu's animagus form did not possess the mane of a male lion. Her upper body remained human in appearance, but she had the powerful limbs of a lion. Instead of the bat wings typical of a mantic, she had the majestic eagle wings of a sphinx. Her tail, though, retained the manticore's appearance, complete with terrifying stingers. Zhang Chu was still in a daze. She looked at her lion-like legs in confusion, then raised her eyes to see Ethan watching her intently, which made her think he was mocking her. The manticore blood carried a destructive and bloodthirsty spirit. Ethan's presence made her instinctively want to pounce in his direction, but her unfamiliarity with the Sphinx's movements resulted in her sitting on the ground awkwardly, resembling a lion-shaped duck. Ethan, attuned to every subtle change in Zhang Chu's emotions, immediately spoke in a gentle and soothing tone. "Zhang Chu, don't let the lion and scorpion's nature overwhelm you. That wildness can be tamed. I believe in your strength to overcome and control it." Hearing this, Zhang Chu glanced sideways at Ethan, studying his handsome face. The face she had long cherished and pursued now served as a beacon, imbuing her with strength and confidence. Gradually, her initially fierce expression softened, and the mad, bloodthirsty impulse began to wane. After a moment, she started to stagger towards Ethan again. He watched quietly, his wand ready to handle any emergencies. This was a process of self-confrontation, and he would not intervene unless absolutely necessary. Soon the Sphinx reached Ethan. With just a slight pounce, she could have knocked him to the ground. However, in the final moment, she gently rested her head in Ethan's arms, a peaceful Sphinx Jiangchu. Chapter 416. Great, you succeeded, Jiangchu. Ethan gently stroked her head, marveling at the transformation. The head nestled in his arms shifted, revealing the distinct features of a lioness, complete with the species' unique mane. It appeared that she could alternate between a manticore and a sphinx at will. Navigating the complexities of such transformations and the tumultuous emotions that accompanied them was no small feat. After a brief respite, Jiangchu rose, eager to explore her newfound abilities. Inheriting the traits of both the manticore and the sphinx, she was astonished to discover that the human head of the sphinx allowed her to cast spells in this form. "I feel pretty good, though casting spells on all fours is going to take some getting used to," Zhang Chu remarked, her voice now deeper and more resonant than before, a change likely due to the alteration of her vocal cords. Her voice had acquired a unique timbre, exuding an indescribable blend of laziness and allure. "Perhaps you could try mastering spellcasting without a wand," Ethan suggested, optimistic. "With the intelligence of a sphinx, it shouldn't be too challenging for you." "Casting spells without a wand sounds just as daunting as it seems," Jiangchu admitted, her hesitation palpable. "You might also consider learning aspects of the animagus transformation to address this issue," Ethan proposed, sharing his own research ambitions. "I'm currently exploring how to partially transform into an alicorn centaur. Once I've succeeded, you could attempt something similar." As a Sphinx animagus, Jiangchu's attributes were impressive. Strength, 23, Agility 16, Constitution 18, Intelligence 20, Perception 19, Charisma 19. Her abilities included advanced magic resistance, poison, a sting, a keen sense of smell, iron will, and anecdotal knowledge. Her spell repertoire spanned from basic detection and purification spells to more advanced abilities like Emblem of Stun at the 7th level. Embracing her animagus form opened a door to a realm of wonders for Zhang Chu. The transformation enhanced her intelligence and granted her access to the Sphinx's inherited memories, which contained ancient rune magic. Although these magics originated from ancient Egypt and bore similarities to rune spells, they offered Zhang Chu a key to unlocking the deeper meanings and rules behind the runes, akin to learning a new language that bridges understanding across different cultures. Moreover, Her proficiency in prophecy spells saw significant improvement. Sphinxes, renowned for their prowess in prophecy, could effortlessly communicate and interpret messages, a trait that ancient civilizations revered. With her new animagus form, Zhang Chu found her tutoring in divination and numerology advancing rapidly. Ethan, meanwhile, could devote more attention to constructing the maze. The bulk of the work involved erecting the maze's main structure, a task expedited by Ethan's assembly of skilled helpers. These so-called professional helpers were Ethan's creation of natural spirits during this period extended beyond just dryads. Utilizing the streams surrounding the forest, he brought forth several water nymphs. The strong winds above the forest gave birth to wind nymphs, and there was even a plan to introduce seawater to create sea nymphs. Ethan's inspiration for these natural elves stemmed from the legendary nymphs, guardians of nature's most pure and beautiful secrets. These beings, with their beautiful appearances and elf-like characteristics, have a deep connection with the natural world. The tree spirits, also known as wood forest fairies or wood fairies, and the water fairies, famously known as nymphs, along with wind fairies or sylphs, and the flower spirits named Inawen, were all part of Ethan's grand design to add a touch of fragrance and beauty to his surroundings. However, Ethan realized he didn't need an extensive number of spirits for his current project. A few tree spirits would suffice. Considering the tree spirit's range of activities would be mighted to the protected forest, Ethan carefully selected several saplings from his own forest. He allowed the tree spirits to inhabit these saplings, which were then transplanted to the Quidditch pitch. Through a special ritual, these saplings were transformed, making them part of the forest. This method of forest expansion relied on the trees and the spirits within them as coordinates. If uprooted, the expansion would be nullified. With the Dryad's assistance, Ethan was able to cultivate a large number of high-density gardening shrubs on the Quidditch pitch. These shrubs were formed into hedges and then woven into a maze. Beyond their role as construction helpers, the tree spirits also served as Ethan's eyes and guards during competitions. Since the maze walls were made of hedges, the tree spirits could blend into them, hiding and appearing anywhere within the maze undetected. The construction of the bush maze, with the help of the Dryads and the centaur druid Daisy, was completed in less than 3 days, astonishing the professors. It was their first encounter with a centaur druid and tree spirits, sparking their curiosity about these unique and beautiful creatures. However, Daisy and the Dryads showed no interest in the professors, only revealing themselves in Ethan's presence. The Auror's circle-circle spellcasting technique also impressed the professors, with Professor Flitwick and others believing it could be a world-changing magic. With these innovations, the entire maze was completed in just 2 weeks. As May drew to a close, Hermione clutched a note from Professor McGonagall that read, "Tonight at 9 o'clock on the Quidditch pitch, Mr. Bagman will reveal the secret of the 4th project." As the night darkened, Hermione, passing by the school library at 8:30, encountered Ethan exiting. She eagerly invited him to join her at the Quidditch pitch. "Since you've been involved in the construction of the 4th project, can you tell us what it will be?" Hermione asked curiously. Ethan and Hermione stepped onto the stone steps into the cloudy night. After experiencing 3 games, Hermione had developed a good understanding of the Triwizard Tournament and had come to accept its somewhat flexible rules. Ethan smiled slightly, but didn't answer her directly. Instead, he asked, "What do you hope it will be?" "Underground tunnels, maybe? We could be going on a treasure hunt," Hermione guessed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ethan was a bit surprised by her enthusiasm for treasure hunting. He thought to himself that maybe for next Christmas he could consider giving her a cute niffler as a gift. "Don't worry, you'll find out soon," Ethan said with a mysterious smile, accompanying Hermione as they walked across the dark lawn towards the Quidditch pitch. As they passed through a gap between the stands, they finally stepped onto the pitch, only to hear Harry's angry voice echo in the stadium. The Quidditch pitch, usually flat and smooth, was now unrecognizable. The center of the pitch was enclosed by a high wall, forming a regular hexagon and covering an area of thousands of square meters. However, the interior was hidden from view. Crumb had tried to climb up to the stands to look inside, but found that a layer of white fog covered the hexagon, blocking his sight. The only visible entrance was a doorway in the center of each of the 6 sides of the high wall. Hermione trotted to one of the doorways and muttered uncertainly, "Is it a hedge?" She then approached the door, trying to peer inside. "This place is sealed by a hedge and cannot be entered at all," Fleur commented, coming up beside Hermione and observing her actions with curiosity. "What do you think?" "A maze, I guess," Hermione said hesitantly, her face a mix of anticipation and nervousness. "Hello!" A cheerful voice sounded in the stadium, drawing everyone's attention. Ludo Bagman, with a smile on his face, walked to the center of the stadium, and the competitors gathered around him. "What do you think?" Bagman asked enthusiastically. "In fact, the facilities inside have been completed and are just waiting for the game day to arrive. There will be a wonderful competition here." He noticed the worry on Harry's face and smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry. Once the tournament is over, your Quidditch pitch will be back to its original state. Now, I don't suppose you can guess what we're planning to do here?" For a moment, everyone was silent, pondering Bagman's question. Then, Bagman, with a smile, explained, "Well, it seems Hagrid has kept what's inside quite secret. Let me tell you, this is a maze. The final task is very straightforward. The Goblet of Fire is placed in the center of the maze, and the first champion to touch it will be declared the final winner." He paused before continuing. "This competition is unprecedentedly grand, and we expect a large number of spectators to come and watch. To this end, merchants in Hogsmeade Village have provided us with generous sponsorships. Even if they don't become the champion, every competitor is guaranteed a share of the rewards based on their ranking. Updated for Thurs, added update 8316. Please support me with custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. Your votes are really important to me as the author." Chapter 417. After introducing the game's rules, Bagman began to sing Ethan's praises daily. "We owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. Green from the referee team for proposing this project. The sports department has worked closely with the merchants in Hogsmeade Village, securing sponsorship for this event. Those tight-fisted old-timers at the Ministry of Magic wouldn't dream of donating such a substantial amount of galleons," he said. Ethan stood among the competitors, looking slightly embarrassed. Additionally, a few pure-blood families have shown unexpected generosity this time, Bagman suddenly remembered. They've also sponsored the competition and prepared some surprises to ensure that no competitor leaves empty-handed. Ethan frowned upon hearing this, but chose not to comment. "So, we just need to navigate through the maze?" Fleur asked, sounding skeptical. "Yes, though it will be filled with numerous obstacles," Bagman replied with a cheerful tone. However, his mood soon turned somber as he mentioned, "Miss Presto, from the Department of Biological Management and Control, the renowned Fire Dragon Queen, has prepared many dangerous creatures for us. Professor Hagrid is also eager to contribute, but with so many options, we're yet to make a final decision." The consensus among the competitors was clear. It would be best to avoid involving any creatures. In addition to that, there will be spells to break and magical plants that will cause trouble. You know, the usual challenges. "The competitor with the highest score will enter the maze first," he said, smiling at Hermione and Fleur, then continued, "followed by Mr. Potter, and finally Mr. Polyakov. Success will depend on your ability to overcome these obstacles. It should be quite the adventure, right?" Hermione and Harry were well aware that any creatures provided by Hagrid for such an occasion would be far from amusing. Nonetheless, they nodded politely along with the other competitors. "Great. If there are no questions, shall we head back to the castle? It's getting rather chilly out here," Bagman suggested. Once Bagman concluded, the maze was sealed off, leaving no hints of what lay inside. Eager to escape the cold, the competitors made their way towards the castle, with Hermione and Fleur lagging behind at Ethan's request. "What do you say, Ethan? Fancy giving us a sneak peek of the maze?" Fleur asked, her excitement evident in her sparkling silver eyes. "What are you thinking? I wouldn't dare cheat so blatantly," Ethan replied with a wry smile. "I've kept you here because I want to introduce you to a special friend." "A special friend? Who is it? Where are they?" Hermione inquired, looking around but seeing no one. He's right here, Ethan said, giving Hermione a puzzled look. A ghost? Hermione's voice quivered at the thought. I don't have such poor taste, Ethan reassured her. Besides, with your abilities, a simple fireball spell would suffice against a ghost. What's there to fear? But ghosts are terrifying, Hermione protested. Suddenly, Fleur interjected, I think I can sense the person you're talking about. They seem to be hiding in that hedge. She pointed towards the hedge near the entrance. Ethan looked surprised but pleased. Oh, how did you figure that out? But yes, you're correct. The person I'm waiting for is indeed there. So you're saying it's not a ghost? Hermione, who had just calmed down, felt a shiver run down her spine again. Ethan was baffled by her reaction. How does this relate to ghosts? He wondered aloud. Seeing Ethan continue to play coy, Hermione's frustration grew. If it's not a ghost, then how can it hide in the wall? She demanded. Her curiosity piqued yet again. Ethan couldn't help but laugh at the situation, unsure whether to clarify the mystery or enjoy the moment a bit longer. Hearing Hermione's guess, Ethan couldn't help but smile wryly. You certainly have a vivid imagination, but there's more than just ghosts lurking in the walls. You still won't admit it, Hermione said, growing or excited and specific with each word. I clearly saw the ghost's eyes and heard her cry. It must be a female ghost. Indeed, at that moment, a faint sound of a woman crying could be heard from the direction of the door, seemingly confirming the presence of a female ghost, or so they thought, playing on the English pun of a witch. Ethan looked towards the door and called out loudly, Rose, stop pretending to be a ghost and come out. The faint ghostly cry immediately transformed into a girl's laughter, clear as a silver bell. Moments later, a beautiful girl with green hair and eyes emerged from the hedge by the doorway. She ran towards them joyfully and then threw herself into Ethan's arms. Master, I'm here! Seeing the female ghost she had been afraid of now jumping onto her boyfriend in such an intimate pose, Hermione's fear vanished, replaced by a glare of annoyance. This gave her a chance to observe the female ghost from a closer perspective. She soon realized that this girl was indeed not a ghost, as her body was solid, not translucent. However, she was clearly not human either, given her hair made of vines and leaves. Hermione had initially thought she was encountering Ni Xiaoqian, but it turned out she was more akin to a tree spirit, a concept she recognized from Liao Jai, though none were as beautiful as Ni Xiaoqian. Ethan seemed to notice her confusion and explained, Her name is Rose. She's a tree spirit and currently serves as a hidden guard in this maze. He paused before adding, I created the tree spirit as a natural spirit. He then detailed the creation process of the tree spirit to them, along with basic information about these beings. Finally, he concluded, these natural spirits I've created embody the essence of natural power, similar to how Vila are naturally born fairies. Fleur, finding Rose might have been due to the connection between natural spirits. I see, Fleur nodded, understanding dawning on her. However, Hermione still looked at Rose with an indescribable displeasure. Hands on her hips, she questioned, So, according to you, are all dryads, or any other spirit for that matter, as seductive as her? The dryad, Rose, stood before them with a grace and beauty that was enviable, coupled with an innocent face. As a dryad, her every gesture was filled with allure, charming and endearing, exuding a sense of purity and desire. It wasn't just Ethan, even Hermione found herself drawn to her. Oh, that's not true. Rose blinked her green eyes innocently while clinging to Ethan. They are much more beautiful than I am. Exactly, Hermione exclaimed, as if she had found conclusive evidence. You must have had an ulterior motive in creating these creatures. She knew Ethan too well. Given his carefree nature, she strongly suspected that his creation of these beings was motivated by something less than noble. An ulterior motive? Ethan said, attempting to gently push Rose away, though she clung to him like a vine. I simply wanted to create some assistants to help manage the garden, and why not make them beautiful? It's more pleasing to the eye. I wouldn't want to punish myself by creating a bunch of unattractive beings. Only a ghost would believe that, Hermione retorted, her tone cold, clearly expressing her doubts about Ethan's intentions. However, she didn't press the issue further. Seizing the opportunity, Ethan explained, I called Rose here to introduce her to you. When the game begins, she and the other dryads will hide in the hedges to protect you. Should you encounter any unexpected situations, you can always ask them for help." "Okay," Hermione finally conceded, though her skepticism lingered. Hermione eventually understood Ethan's good intentions, though she remained skeptical, suspecting he had ulterior motives for creating the goblins. Despite her concerns, she recognized her inability to intervene. During their conversation with Changwei, Hermione and Fleur expressed their fascination with Ethan's creation of a new race. The ability to create a species, particularly one with intelligence and special powers, without resorting to hybridization or transformation, significantly impressed them. Ethan's method of natural birth for these beings added an extraordinary aspect to his talents, enhancing his reputation in their eyes. After their discussion with Changwei, the two gained insights into the upcoming game. Ethan's creations, Rose and the Dryads, were far from ordinary. With intelligence scores of at least 15, they were considered geniuses by human standards. However, their recent birth and lack of exposure to the world left them vulnerable and somewhat naive. Despite their inexperience, the two girls managed to uncover many secrets of the maze with remarkable ease. Now, with a clearer direction for their training and the comforting thought of being protected by the tree spirit, they felt more at ease. The image of the tree spirit lingered in their minds, symbolizing a source of protection and wisdom for Ethan's proud creations. Chapter 4 and 18. About half a month had passed since Zhang Chu successfully mastered her animagus transformation. She could now adeptly morph into a sphinx, capable of running on all fours, flying, and even using her manticore-derived stinging tail to launch a poisonous needle from 100 meters away, accurately piercing a balloon. This newfound ability allowed her to understand the fears of the female sphinx firsthand, especially when she transformed and joined Ethan, who could turn into a chimera. Recalling Ethan's promise to the female sphinx, and finding herself with ample free time thanks to her rapid academic progress, Zhang Chu decided it was the perfect moment to visit the sphinx at Hagrid's hut, bringing Ethan along for the journey. Unlike their last visit, where Ethan had carried her in his chimera form, this time, Zhang Chu had the honor of carrying Ethan. However, to avoid detection, she had to cast advanced invisibility on herself. Upon their arrival, the female sphinx was astounded by Zhang Chu's transformation abilities, eagerly circling her and sharing secrets known only among their kind. The loneliness of the sphinx was palpable. It had been ages since she had seen another of her kind. Zhang Chu and the sphinx quickly bonded, with Zhang Chu promising to visit her if she ever traveled to Egypt. As they left the hut, they were greeted by a light drizzle, the late spring weather in May proving to be unpredictable. Opting to walk back, they felt the fine raindrops soaking through their socks, the hems of their cloaks dampened by the journey. The forbidden forest seemed enchanted under this weather, each tree shimmering with a silver glow as if veiled in gauze, the raindrops cascading down the leaves and onto their hair, an uncomfortable sensation. Their discomfort soon turned to worry upon hearing low, sorrowful moans emanating from Hagrid's hut. Ethan, having never seen Hagrid in such distress, led Zhang Chu to knock on the door, calling out, "Hagrid, are you there?" Over time, Ethan had developed a deep personal friendship with Hagrid, beyond the initial connection through Harry and the others. Ethan's frequent ventures into the Forbidden Forest for various reasons, from collecting materials to accompanying friends, had strengthened this bond. Hagrid, who also supplied Ethan with acromantula silk, held a special place in Ethan's circle of friends. The door eventually opened, revealing Hagrid's towering figure, his eyes red and swollen with tears that fell onto his leather vest, creating a soft pattering sound. "Why did you come here so early?" Hagrid asked, leaning against the doorframe and wiping his face with a large handkerchief. Zhang Chu explained their visit to the Sphinx, while Ethan, concerned by Hagrid's disheveled appearance, inquired about his well-being. "Maxim, that woman," Hagrid managed to say before his voice broke, hinting at a matter of the heart. Ethan quickly supported Hagrid back into the house, where the gentle giant collapsed into a chair, his tears flowing freely. Noticing Ethan's concerned gaze, Hagrid buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by emotion. "Hagrid," Ethan said, feeling a wave of enlightenment wash over him as he patted Hagrid's arm sympathetically. He sighed, momentarily at a loss for words on how to offer comfort. After all, he had never experienced the heartache of unrequited love. "I shouldn't have trusted foreigners," Hagrid lamented, continuously wiping his eyes, his voice laden with deep disappointment. "I see her true colors now. She never liked me. She's trying to win me over again, wanting me to reveal what the third task is. Woo-woo. You can't trust any of them. I don't ever want to see her again, not in this lifetime." Who would have thought that the same Hagrid who once dreamed of spending a lifetime with Madame Maxime now wished never to see her again? Such is the nature of first loves, characterized by their emotional volatility, fluctuating from one extreme to another. Ethan wagered it wouldn't take a year for Hagrid's feelings to revert to their original state. Hagrid whimpered, his sorrow akin to that of a wounded beast, as he roughly wiped his eyes with his sleeve, attempting to erase the pain etched in his heart. Zhang Chu, seeking to offer some solace, walked over to the fire and returned with a steaming cup of tea. The warm aroma of the tea seemed to offer a gentle caress to the soul. "Have a cup of tea, Hagrid, and try to lighten your mood. You have classes to teach today. It wouldn't do for the students to see their professor in such a state," Zhang Chu suggested, hoping to divert Hagrid's attention. Hagrid lifted his head, revealing eyes red and swollen with sadness. "I haven't been feeling like myself lately," he confessed, stroking his beard with one hand while feebly wiping his face with the other. "I'm heartbroken, and it seems like no one enjoys my classes." "I enjoy your class," Zhang Chu interjected, stretching the truth a bit. "Marietta does too. Then, will you attend my class next year?" Hagrid asked amidst sobs. Zhang Chu was taken aback by his timing. She hesitated, recalling the missed classes and the frantic catch-up sessions for the OBUL exams. Facing the NETs, she couldn't afford to repeat that experience. Thus, she nodded firmly. "Of course, I'll take care of magical creatures." "You're a good lad," Hagrid said, a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes. "What about Marietta? Will she join my class in the 6th year?" Faced with a difficult question, Zhang Chu didn't want to lie, but also wished to spare Hagrid's feelings. "I don't know. She hasn't mentioned it," she replied evasively. Marietta had made it clear she had no intention of continuing with the course after their experiences with the blast-ended Scroots. After a moment of silence, Hagrid stood up. "You're right, Ethan, Zhang Chu. I can't let you down. Let's go see the snails. They've been thriving lately." It was evident that Hagrid's passion for the blast-ended Scroots far surpassed his romantic woes. Ethan and Zhang Chu exchanged a look of resignation, silently agreeing to follow Hagrid and help him close the door behind them. The blast-ended Scroots indeed grew rapidly, though their dietary preferences remained a mystery. Ethan observed Hagrid's face light up with genuine joy and pride upon seeing these creatures. It was clear he harbored a deep affection for these creatures, despite their general unpopularity among young wizards. When Zhang Chu mixed a concoction of canned herring and blue cheese and approached the enclosure to entice a few Scroots, a commotion erupted. The Scroots, seemingly sensing an allure, became restless and surged towards Zhang Chu. Among them, the two largest Scroots displayed particular excitement, pushing aside others in their eagerness to reach the tempting offering. In their zeal for the first bite, they even clashed, sparks flying in every direction. Zhang Chu sensed something amiss. The Scroots did emit a foul odor, but it was unlikely to cause such fervor. The real reason for their excitement, he realized, was not the food, but something else entirely. "Don't fight, or not to fight?" Witnessing the scene, Hagrid quickly intervened, using his considerable strength to separate the two snails locked in fierce combat. Zhang Chu observed the unfolding drama and discreetly moved behind Ethan, preferring to keep the details of the peculiar incident to herself. "It's really strange," Hagrid mused, scratching his head in bewilderment. "These two are among my favorites, yet I've never seen them engage in such aggressive behavior. Could it be their breeding season already?" He pondered aloud, somewhat baffled by the intricate behaviors of the snails. After all, these snails are hybrid creatures, born from a cross between a manticore and a fire crab. Their behavioral patterns are truly unpredictable. Upon hearing Hagrid's explanation, Zhang Chu blinked, a sense of foreboding creeping into her heart. The situation seemed to hint at an impending disaster. Chapter 419. That night, under the veil of darkness, a mysterious figure wrapped tightly in a scarf stealthily approached the forbidden forest. As the figure neared Hagrid's hut, it transformed into a sphinx with manticore-like features. Moving with the light, graceful steps of a cat, she lowered her voice as she neared the enclosure of the blast-ended Scroots. Upon her arrival, the Scroots rushed toward her in a frenzy. The two leading the charge began circling each other, competing for the forefront position in a dance-like rhythm. One Scroot even executed an astonishing acrobatic maneuver, balancing on its front legs while lashing out with its tail flames like a whip at its opponent. Observing this, the figure, now revealed to be Zhang Chu, quickly lowered her voice further, attempting to communicate with the creatures using the language of the soul. "Stop! Stop quickly! Stop! Stop fighting!" To her surprise, the previously combative blast-ended Scroots gradually calmed down under her command. Though they didn't disperse, the scene became significantly less chaotic. Zhang Chu's fears were realized, but thankfully, the situation hadn't escalated into greater chaos. She cast a nervous glance towards Hagrid's hut, relieved to find no sign of movement. It appeared Hagrid had grown accustomed to the occasional uproar caused by the blast-ended Scroots. With a glimmer of hope, Zhang Chu attempted to direct several Scroots to perform tasks such as moving forward, retreating, squatting, and even turning somersaults. She didn't resort to spells like animal command technique, instruction, or dominating animals. Yet, to her astonishment, they executed every command flawlessly, even managing the complex somersaults without hesitation. The realization that she could effortlessly control these despised creatures filled her with a bizarre sense of irritation. She found herself unconsciously swaying her sting-covered tail back and forth, as if to dispel her inner turmoil. Zhang Chu recalled how Ethan had used his druid abilities to command animals, how they seemed naturally drawn to him, ready to undertake any task he assigned. She remembered witnessing the centaur druid Daisy harnessing the Forbidden Forest's power, commanding all its inhabitants with a mere gesture, embodying the majesty of nature itself. Even Hermione, after becoming an animagus with cat-like abilities, had gained the allegiance of all Hogwarts cats, including the usually mischievous Crookshanks and the student-averse Mrs. Norris. Zhang Chu had once fantasized about commanding a legion of monsters, or choosing an animagus form with similar commanding abilities. Yet, she never anticipated that she would discover such a power so soon, nor that it would manifest with the blast-ended Scroots, creatures deemed worthless even by Hagrid. Determined to keep this secret from Ethan and the others, Zhang Chu feared that Ethan, knowing his nature, would share this discovery with the Genius Club members. Then, he and Luna would endlessly tease her, possibly even bestowing upon her a nickname like Queen of Blast-Ended Scroots. Lost in these thoughts, Zhang Chu let out a sigh, which, due to her current form, emerged as a loud lion's roar. This unexpected noise finally alerted Hagrid. Zhang Chu heard the wooden door of Hagrid's hut creak open and immediately ran in panic in the opposite direction. After a few steps, she remembered her ability to become invisible. Hagrid, meanwhile, approached the enclosure of the blast-ended Scroot and surveyed the area with vigilance. Bending down, he discovered the huge lion footprints left by Zhang Chu in her animagus form, amidst the clutter of smaller wizard shoe prints. "Manticore," he exclaimed, recognizing the species from the footprints. So, it came to see its descendants. Hagrid, moved by this realization, took out his large handkerchief to wipe the tears from his eyes, sobbing. "I knew it wasn't malevolent by nature. It didn't even try to attack me with its stinger this time." The news quickly reached Hermione and Why. The following day, as they headed to the magical creatures class, they pondered how to comfort Hagrid. Perhaps Ethan and Zhang Chu's words had an effect, or maybe Hagrid's naturally resilient spirit, or even the previous day's misunderstanding, had helped heal his wounded heart. Before class, Hermione noticed Hagrid's uplifted spirits as he stood at the door of his hut, eagerly awaiting his students. Several open cardboard boxes were at his feet, containing creatures the students had never seen before. Hermione's heart sank at the sight of the boxes, fearing another batch of hatched snails. However, her worry turned to surprise when Hagrid carefully lifted a small, furry black creature with a long nose and flat, shovel-like front paws from one of the boxes. It was both strange and adorable, blinking at the students in a slightly confused manner under their collective gaze. "This is a niffler," Hagrid announced, waiting for the students to gather around. "They usually live deep in mines and have a penchant for shiny things. Watch." No sooner had he finished speaking than a niffler leaped into Draco Malfoy's arms, its paws frantically searching Draco's pockets for anything valuable. Caught off guard, Draco stumbled backward. Pansy Parkinson rushed to his aid, attempting to pull the niffler away by its soft fur. However, the creature quickly turned and tried to bite off Pansy's bracelet, causing her to shriek and retreat. The scene descended into chaos as other students were similarly attacked by the nifflers. The young wizards struggled to detach the stubborn creatures, which employed guerrilla tactics, darting around and pilfering gold coins, watches, jewelry, and other valuables. "Take out all the valuable things you have on you," Hagrid shouted, his voice booming across the courtyard. Draco, looking pale and disgusted, asked in confusion, "Do we have to pay for them?" "Maybe we can help each other," Hermione suggested, quickly freezing the niffler on Neville's head with her wand, and then removing it. Inspired by this act, the students banded together to manage the chaos. Before long, they had subdued the mischievous creatures. Ron and a few others, who had nothing of value on them, stood aside, spared by the niffler's selective attention. Ron felt a twinge of embarrassment, wishing he had been among those actively fending off the creatures, despite the apparent disarray. At least it proves that he is a wealthy individual, rather than just standing aside, which would effectively label him as impoverished. Eventually, all the sniffs were captured and securely placed back into their box. The young wizards tidied themselves up, and Hagrid let out a long sigh of relief. "Now, you can safely store your valuables in your bags and label them with your wands. These bags are sniff-proof to prevent any mix-ups." "Those who have done so can choose a sniff," Hagrid instructed, gesturing towards a large, freshly cleared area of land. "We're going to have some fun with them today. You see that spot over there? I've buried a few gold coins. Whoever selects a sniff and uncovers the most gold coins will receive a prize from me." Chapter 420. The Power of Generosity. The little wizards had just witnessed Sniff's power, and they eagerly took out their belongings. When Hagrid handed a bag to Ron, Ron's face flushed with embarrassment. He wished he could vanish into the ground like Sniff. He had nothing to contribute. During the Quidditch World Cup preliminary match at the end of his third year, he had mistaken the gold galleons scattered by the Irish leprechaun, the Irish team's mascot, for real currency. Little did he know, those were merely fake galleons that would eventually disappear, leaving him in debt. Since then, his family had not given him even a single copper nut as pocket money, let alone a gold galleon. "Oh, by the way, Ron, I just remembered that I still owed you some money from last time. I can pay it back to you now," Harry said, noticing Ron's discomfort. Understanding the feeling all too well, Harry quickly devised a discreet way to help, slipping several gold galleons and a handful of silver sickles into Ron's bag. "You can return it to me after this class," Harry whispered, ensuring their conversation remained private. Ron's face turned an even deeper shade of red. He muttered a barely audible, "Thank you," filled with gratitude. Taking a moment to compose himself, Ron began to observe the other young wizards. He noticed that their wallets were uniformly designed, a detail that piqued his curiosity. What surprised him even more was their apparent wealth, especially the top students, whose expenditures far exceeded what an ordinary young wizard could afford. Even the wallets themselves were valuable, each enchanted with the invisible extension curse to accommodate the vast amounts of galleons and sickles. Hermione, in particular, caught Ron's attention. He had always known that Hermione's family was well off, with both of her parents working as dentists, a highly respected and well-paid profession in the Muggle world. Initially, Ron thought Hermione might be facing the same financial predicament as him. However, to his astonishment, Hermione contributed the most significant amount of all. The sheer volume of gold galleons she provided made Ron realize that his family's entire fortune paled in comparison to just a fraction of Hermione's contribution. Feeling a mix of sadness and frustration, Ron confided in Harry. "I hate not having money. I don't think it's shameful at all that George and Fred are trying to make extra money. I should have begged them to let me join them." Harry understood Ron's feelings, especially the sting of realizing that the girl he admired came from a wealthier background than his own family. Such a revelation was indeed a harsh blow to someone as prideful as Ron, but Harry was at a loss for words to comfort him. Unbeknownst to them, Hermione's wealth was not as it seemed. With Ethan's presence, Hermione never lacked for daily necessities, nor did she feel the need to save money. The substantial sum she contributed was actually the operating funds of the Erudite Society and some intermediary transaction funds. The Society had launched an income-generating initiative to benefit the young wizards and stimulate their enthusiasm for applying their learned skills. They organized the production of simple alchemy products and potion products for customers in need. Ethan himself outsourced tasks such as producing demulcents, general solvents, and other basic materials to the Society. This made the Society an important supplier to the Weasley twins, encouraging the young wizards to keenly learn alchemy and potion-making skills. In recent times, the Erudition Society has established cooperative relationships with numerous merchants in Hogsmeade, becoming their suppliers. The Triwizard Tournament saw many products used by Hogsmeade to entertain visitors, showcasing the wisdom and efforts of the young wizards. This initiative allowed the Society's members to earn a significant amount of extra money, contributing to their wealth. The Boshi Society, acting as an intermediary platform, collects a fee from each ion to support its operations and provides scholarships to young wizards. Furthermore, the Boshi Society's logistics department has innovated consignment services. Here, young wizards can consign their meticulously crafted alchemy products, potions, or second-hand magic items, awaiting purchase by interested wizards. The unified wallets, created by Ethan while teaching Hermione the invisible extension charm, are a testament to his craftsmanship. Ethan's creations, known for their durability and multifunctionality, are highly sought after and considered treasures among magic items. This initiative not only drew attention to the consignment platform, but also offered unique benefits within the Society. Additionally, senior wizards often sell used textbooks to their juniors, enabling them to earn money while helping the juniors save funds. This practice has become a beneficial resource for Hogwarts students. To enhance the consignment platform, Ethan organized a team to explore the Room of Requirement's largest hiding room. They selected items with restorative value, using ordinary items for restoration spells and repair spell practice, and magical items as examples for alchemy and enchantment courses. Over time, the Boshi Society has evolved beyond a simple extracurricular magic interest group. It has become an essential marketplace for those who cherish life, a source of income for those seeking financial independence, a treasure trove of knowledge for the curious, a shortcut to emerging factions within the Ministry of Magic for career-minded young wizards, and a stage for the brightest future talents in the UK. Given this context, it's understandable why Hermione, as the Society's financial manager, possesses a substantial amount of money. Her wealth represents not just personal savings, but the cumulative income from the intermediary and consignment platforms. The vast wealth in her wallet is a testament to the Boshi Society's success. Hermione's reluctance to reveal the contents of her wallet stemmed from the staggering amount of money it contained, symbolizing the collective wisdom and efforts of the Society's members. Faced with an awkward situation, she had no choice but to slowly transfer the glittering gold galleons into the bag provided by Hagrid. However, the small opening of her purse made this task embarrassingly difficult, highlighting the practical challenges of managing such wealth. It took Hermione a full 5 minutes to complete the task. During this time, she even had to ask Hagrid for a few more bags to accommodate everything. Hagrid, his eyes wide with astonishment, was momentarily speechless at the sight of the wealth laid out before him. Hermione's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, and she lowered her head, hoping to avoid any misconceptions of flaunting her wealth. "Is Granger being kept as a little lover by Ethan? I never knew she was so rich before," Pansy whispered sourly in Draco's ear. Draco quickly covered Pansy's mouth with his hand, reprimanding her in a hushed tone. Don't talk nonsense. She manages the finances of the Erudite Society. It's normal for her to have so much money. You've made a considerable amount yourself through the society. I've told you not to provoke her again. The young wizards in the society didn't react oddly to the scene. However, some, like Ron, took note of these details and secretly resolved to find an opportunity after class to uncover the secret to their wealth. Update 4th, added update 84. Please support me with custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have any votes to spare, please give them to me, the author. It truly means a lot to me and is very important.